The tragedy of groupthink, where bad ideas go unchallenged. You are lying in bed. The covers are warm, the lights are off, and your brain is trying to let go. But instead of slipping into a dream, it offers you a memory, a strange one. That time in a meeting, maybe last month, maybe last year, when someone said something incredibly wrong, objectively wrong, and everyone nodded, including you. Now, before you overthink it too much, take a second to subscribe, tap the bell, like the video, leave a comment with your favorite paradox. You know how this works. It keeps these strange little bedtime thoughts coming and lets the algorithm know that you are not just here to fall asleep. You are here to drift into philosophical absurdity with style. So now back to that meeting. There you were. Someone said, "We should paint the office windows black to save on air conditioning." Or maybe it was, "Let us replace the company logo with a ferret." Either way, you blinked. You waited for someone to laugh. Nobody laughed. They nodded, slowly, like a cult of agreeable bobbleheads. And then, you nodded too, because that is what people do. That is what groups do. That is what you do when you are caught in the strange, silent undertow of what psychologists call groupthink. It sounds harmless, does it not? Group. Think. Two nice words, but put them together and you get something that derails governments, ruins companies, explodes space shuttles, and somehow makes 5 smart people say yes to something no one individually believes in. Let us unravel this quietly. You are sitting in a room, not metaphorically. A real room, chairs, a whiteboard, some free pastries. There is an idea on the table. It is not good. It might even be dangerous. Your inner voice winces, but nobody else seems concerned. In fact, they seem confident. You glance at your colleague. She is nodding. You look at your boss. He is nodding. Even Carl, who once stapled his tie to a fax machine, is nodding. So you ask yourself the ancient, eternal question. Am I the weird one? And then your lips move, and you nod. That is how it begins. Groupthink is not when people agree. It is when people agree instead of thinking. It is the silent social contract that says, "Let us not cause ripples. Let us not disagree. Let us keep things smooth and civil, even if the boat is heading for a waterfall." And the scariest part, you probably felt good doing it. Groupthink feels safe. It feels warm. It feels like togetherness. Everyone is smiling. Nobody is arguing. There is unity. There is harmony. There is consensus. There is also, unfortunately, often disaster. Let us peek into the past. The year is 1961. A group of highly educated officials sits around a table in Washington, D.C., discussing something called the Bay of Pigs. It is a plan, a strange plan, involving an invasion of Cuba by people who are not quite trained, using resources they do not really have, hoping for an uprising that probably will not happen. 1 or 2 men hesitate, but the mood in the room is confident, united, patriotic. And so they nod. The invasion fails. It is a mess, a humiliating world stage mess. And later, when the dust settles and they ask, "How did this happen?" the answer is not bad intelligence or poor timing. It is, nobody spoke up. Now your mind wanders, because that is what it does when you try to sleep. And it shows you the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986. Engineers worried about the O-rings. Cold weather, rubber, and coal do not mix. But the launch was scheduled. Everyone had deadlines, pressure, excitement. No one wanted to be the one to delay history. The shuttle launched, and 73 seconds later, it became history in the worst possible way. Groupthink did that too. But let us not stay there. It is too heavy. Let us come back to you, to your office, to your group of friends, to your own brain. Because groupthink does not just happen in big rooms with suits and microphones. It happens every day, quietly, harmlessly, tragically. You and your friends agree to go to that restaurant you all secretly hate. because no one wants to sound picky. You and your team agree to a deadline that is objectively impossible, because no one wants to sound weak. You watch a movie no one understands, but afterward you say, "Wow, that was deep," because everyone else is pretending too. This is the paradox. Groupthink feels like belonging, but it is not. It is a performance, a gentle, socially lubricated lie. You lie to keep things smooth, and sometimes you forget you are lying. Now let us shift the frame. You are not in a room. You are in your own head. You have ideas, conflicting ones. Part of you wants change. Another part says no. Part of you wants to speak up. Another says, "Let us not risk it." You hold a quiet vote. The scared parts win. Congratulations. You have formed a committee inside your mind. And guess what? Groupthink lives there too. But what if you had said something? What if someone had? What if, in that meeting, someone had cleared their throat and said, "Actually, I think the ferret logo might be confusing"? Maybe it would not have changed anything, but maybe it would have cracked the spell. Because groupthink does not need to be overthrown. It just needs to be interrupted. You do not need to have the best idea. You just need to ask a question. You do not need to be loud. You just need to be willing. Because the tragedy of groupthink is not that nobody knows better. It is that everybody does and stays silent. Now let us make it strange. What if identity, your whole identity, is the result of groupthink, not society's, not your family's, your own? What if your beliefs are not yours, but just the ideas you nodded to along the way? What if your preferences, your choices, your narrative are just echoes of the strongest voices around you? What if your sense of self was built by a series of unchallenged agreements? Would you know? Would you care? Would you dare to disagree with the version of you that you have become? And now you are spiraling, but gently, softly, philosophically. You think about relationships, the way people slowly align themselves to each other's moods, preferences, opinions. You think about how many times you stayed quiet to keep the peace. You wonder if you are still in love, or just trapped in a shared illusion of consensus. You think about history, wars, mistakes, slow declines, not because people were evil, but because nobody stood up to say, "Actually, no." You think about all the times you saw the cracks and chose to smile anyway. You are not guilty. You are human. But you are starting to see it now. That groupthink is not about stupidity. It is about silence. It is not about weak people. It is about strong people trying not to cause waves. It is not about bad intentions. It is about good intentions gone unchecked. So here you are, alone in the quiet, awake in the dark. The group is gone. There is no one to impress, no one to nod with, just you and the truth that feels like a whisper. You can say no. You can ask why. You can change the script, not because you are rebellious, but because you are alive. And sometimes being alive means seeing something nobody else wants to look at and saying softly, "This is not right." That is not arrogance. That is not ego. That is courage. And courage, whispered once, can be louder than agreement shouted by a crowd. Now close your eyes. The next time someone suggests painting the office windows black, you will know what to do. You will speak. You will shake the spell. You will be the one person in the room who remembers that thinking is not dangerous. Silence is. And if that fails, just suggest the ferret wears glasses. Everyone trusts glasses. Good night. And remember, if everyone at dinner orders the same salad, and it is not even a good salad, you might not be in a restaurant. You might be in a cult. The Optimism Bias Paradox. Why you think everything will be fine right before it is not. Let us start with a mirror. There you are. You are brushing your teeth, making plans. You have got this. Today will go well. You will be productive, efficient, charming. Your emails will sound wise. Your boss will nod with subtle admiration. You will finally reply to that one message from 3 weeks ago and feel like a functioning adult. But as you spit out the toothpaste and step into the chaos of reality, you know, deep down, that you are lying, not intentionally, not maliciously, but confidently, persistently, almost heroically, because inside your brain lives something powerful, something cheerful, something deeply irrational. It is the voice that says, "This time it will work out," even when it absolutely should not. That voice has a name. It is called optimism bias. It is the reason you start projects you never finish, believe travel delays will be minor, and think your banana will stay ripe one more day, even though it already looks like a crime scene. It is not hope. It is not confidence. It is a full-time internal motivational speaker that works without data, without rest, and without permission. And it is strangely comforting. Optimism bias is the psychological tendency to overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes and underestimate the likelihood of negative ones. It is the reason nearly everyone thinks they are less likely than others to get divorced, get fired, or get food poisoning from that chicken that smelled slightly off. It lives in all of us. You think other people get stuck in traffic. You will find a shortcut. Other people forget deadlines. You will rise like a phoenix from your calendar app. Other people miss red flags. You have vision. And yet, somehow there you are, every time, surprised by life's capacity to ruin your day with the efficiency of a well-trained chaos intern. Let us travel backwards. You were probably raised on optimism. Adults said things like, "You can be anything, and everything happens for a reason," without ever clarifying what the reason was or what exactly anything meant. Cartoons ended with lessons. Stories had tidy arcs. Even the weather seemed more symbolic than real. So it is no surprise that you expect good things. You were trained to. But here is the twist. Optimism bias is not entirely wrong. In fact, it is often helpful. It keeps you going. It gives you momentum. It lets you start things that logic would veto. Because if you truly calculated the risks, the effort, the odds of things working out, you would probably stay in bed, permanently, with snacks. Optimism bias is like a pair of sunglasses that makes reality look slightly more manageable, and sometimes that is enough. But there is a catch. You trust it too much. You plan poorly. You overcommit. You say yes to things you will inevitably cancel. You buy vegetables you will never cook. You believe you will catch up on sleep next weekend as if sleep is a rewards program with rollover minutes. And every time, you are shocked when it does not happen. Because optimism bias is not just a miscalculation. It is a promise your brain keeps making even after breaking it repeatedly. It whispers, "This time is different." But it never is. Now let us get philosophical. What is so wrong with expecting the best? Should we all become pessimists? Should we sit in the dark, expect disappointment, and call it wisdom? Not exactly. Because the paradox is not that optimism bias is bad. It is that optimism bias survives in the face of evidence. You fail, you fall short, you burn the soup again, and your brain, loyal as ever, just shrugs and says, "Next time." It is like having a personal trainer who cheers you on as you run into a wall, and you love them for it. You trust them. Because optimism feels good. It feels like control, like purpose, like magic. But it is still a bias, a charming, well-meaning liar in a motivational tracksuit. Now let us watch it play out in other people. You see a friend in a terrible relationship, they say, "It will get better." You see their partner literally texting someone else at dinner. Still, they believe. Why? Optimism bias. Another friend launches a business with no plan, no funding, and a logo that looks like a haunted onion. They say, "I have a good feeling." Why? Optimism bias. You do not argue. You smile. Because you know you have done the same thing. Probably recently. We all have. It is not stupidity. It is not arrogance. It is just hope. Slightly miscalibrated. Now let us make it weird. What if optimism bias is not just a glitch? What if it is a survival feature? Think about it. Evolution favors those who keep going, who try again, who take risks, even dumb ones. The pessimist survives, but the optimist builds civilizations, badly, but still. Without optimism, bias, there would be no second dates, no novels, no airplane prototypes held together by dreams and string. Everything remarkable was built by someone who thought, this might work, and ignored the part of the brain that screamed, it probably will not. So maybe optimism bias is the engine of progress. Maybe it is the human spirit, rewritten in psychological shorthand. But also, maybe it is why your inbox is full of unopened self-improvement newsletters, and your living room has exactly one unfinished DIY shelf leaning against the wall like a drunken giraffe. It is both. That is the paradox. Optimism bias is your greatest cheerleader and your worst planner. It gives you energy, but not a map. It builds your ambition and destroys your schedules. And it does all this with a smile. So what can you do? Not much. You can become aware of it. You can notice when it shows up. You can ask yourself questions like, is this plan based on logic or vibes? And how many times have I believed this before? You can start carrying a small imaginary pessimist in your pocket. Someone who gently says, maybe double-check the flight time, or that avocado is already a fossil. You can love your optimism bias, but you do not have to believe it all the time, because life is not a TED Talk, and not every project will change the world. And sometimes, despite your best intentions, the banana will win. Now, as your body starts to settle into stillness, and your mind curls around that familiar edge of almost sleep, take one last look at the day. It probably did not go the way you planned, but you tried. You believed. You set out with the quiet certainty that things might go well. And maybe tomorrow, they will, or maybe not. But you will still hope. Because you are human. And that is what humans do. Now sleep. Or try to. And if you wake up tomorrow thinking you will be early, you will get everything done and you will not need coffee, that is adorable. Really. The information cascade. When everyone believes it. Because everyone believes it, it begins with shoes. You see someone wearing a strange pair. Thick soles, Velcro, bright yellow. You do not like them, not even a little. But the next day, you see another person wearing them. Then another. Then a stranger on the train. Then your co-worker. Then your friend posts a photo captioned, "These changed my life." Suddenly you are on the website. You are reading reviews. You are adding them to your cart. You do not know why. You still do not like them. But you are one step away from clicking Buy Now. This is how it happens. This is how information spreads. Not because it is true, not because it is good, but because it looks like everyone else already believes it. That is the information cascade. And it is everywhere. It is what happens when people stop trusting their own judgment and start copying the people before them. The logic is simple. They must know something I do not. Repeat that a few times and soon the entire population is confidently marching in the wrong direction with matching shoes and questionable reasoning. You have probably done it. You heard a rumor. It sounded silly. But your friend repeated it. Then someone posted about it. Then a coworker referenced it during lunch. So you thought, maybe it is true? You did not check. You did not verify. You just accepted it. Because it felt like everyone else already had. You do not feel bad. That is how the cascade works. It begins with a few drops. Someone makes a choice. Someone copies that choice. Someone copies the copy. And suddenly the stream becomes a flood. But here's the fun part. The first choice might have been completely random. Imagine a new restaurant opens. No reviews yet. 2 people walk by. 1 walks in. The next person sees that and thinks, it must be good. So they go in too. The next person thinks, look how popular this place is. And the line forms and grows. You join the line. You eat the food. It is terrible. But you still post about it. Because you do not want to be the only one who missed the point. That is the cascade. It is not about facts. It is about momentum. Now let us try a more dramatic example. Say a few investors start buying a strange new cryptocurrency. No one really understands what it does, but it has got a cute dog logo and a clever name. People see the spike, they get curious, they buy in, prices soar, articles are written, celebrities tweet, more people buy, nobody knows what is happening, but they know they do not want to be left behind. And then, pop. The cascade collapses. People stare at their empty wallets and say, but everyone said, yes, they did. And that was the problem. Information cascades turn everyone into echo chambers wearing each other's opinions like borrowed coats. No one knows if it fits. No one asks. They just keep passing it along. And it works. Until it does not. Now pause for a moment. You are probably thinking, I would not fall for that. Which is adorable. Because everyone thinks that. And that is part of the cascade too. Believing that you are watching the parade instead of marching in it. But look back. You have followed trends. You have repeated facts without checking them. You have watched a video, seen the like count, and assumed it meant quality. You have nodded during conversations about things you did not understand because the group already decided. You were part of it, and you probably still are. The cascade does not feel like peer pressure. It feels like safety. It feels like confidence. It feels like agreement. And agreement is cozy. But do not worry. You are not alone in this. Even experts fall into the trap. There are famous stories of doctors, scientists, engineers, all agreeing on something flawed, because the first few voices sounded sure. The cascade started, and nobody wanted to break it. Because breaking it requires risk. You have to say, wait a second. You have to stand still while others move. You have to trust your own doubt over someone else's certainty. That is not easy. Especially when it feels like the whole world is saying, this is the way. Now let us flip it. Imagine you are the first voice. You say something, anything. It might be wrong. It might be right. But if the second person repeats it, the third is more likely to follow. The fourth sees 3 people and joins in. And suddenly, your guess becomes gospel. It does not matter if it is about fashion, science, politics, or pineapple on pizza. Once the cascade begins, truth takes a back seat. Believability becomes about volume, not evidence. So what do? How do you survive the flood? You question the first voice. You ask, where did this start? You step out of the line and look around. You ask, do I actually believe this, or am I just afraid to be wrong alone? It is a lonely question, but a necessary one, because information cascades shape cultures, beliefs, policies. They shape dinner conversations and elections. They shape you. Every time you believe something because everyone else does, the cascade tightens its grip. And every time you say, hold on, a crack forms in the current. You do not have to be a rebel. You just have to be curious. Curious enough to check the source. Curious enough to ask, what if they are all copying each other? Because sometimes they are, and sometimes they are copying you. So tonight, as your thoughts slow and your eyes get heavy, remember the shoes. Remember the dog coin. Remember that most of what people believe started as something small, uncertain, probably invented by someone with too much confidence and not enough coffee. And if someone ever says, well, everyone else thinks so, smile gently and ask, do they? Or are we just taking turns pretending? Now sleep. Drift into dreams. And if you wake up tomorrow and feel like buying something called quantum socks because a celebrity said they improve brain circulation, maybe wait. And if you are wondering what quantum socks actually do, they separate you from your money with precision. The spiral of silence. When speaking up feels like shouting in a library full of statues. You are at a dinner table. There is a discussion happening. Someone makes a bold statement. Maybe it is about politics. Maybe it is about pineapple on pizza. Maybe it is about the merits of cold plunges and why every human being should apparently now start their morning in an ice bucket. You disagree. You strongly disagree. But you smile. You nod. You take a bite of mashed potatoes and say absolutely nothing. Because something inside you whispers, not worth it. That whisper, that internal nudge that says, let it go, even when you know you are right, that is the spiral of silence. It is not the loudest paradox. It does not crash in like groupthink or explode like optimism bias. It is quieter, slower, but somehow worse. It is what happens when you feel like your opinion is not popular. So you keep it to yourself. And because you keep it to yourself, others do not hear it. So they assume nobody thinks like you. So they stay quiet too. And the silence grows, and loops, and repeats. And before you know it, everyone is pretending they all agree. They do not. But the spiral is strong. The spiral is efficient. The spiral says, better to be silent than to be isolated. And most people listen, because speaking up in a group that disagrees with you feels a bit like doing karaoke in a room full of mimes. Unwelcome, awkward, suspicious. So you stay quiet, and someone else sees you staying quiet, and they stay quiet too. It builds. This is how false majorities are born. You look around and think, everyone else seems fine with this. They are not. They are thinking the same thing. But no one is speaking, because no one wants to be the only one speaking. The spiral of silence is not about the power of the loud. It is about the power of the quiet. It is about how easily people convince themselves that their silence is logical, even noble. I do not want to start something. It is not the right time. They probably know more than I do. And so the silence deepens. Not because no one has anything to say, but because no one wants to be first. Let us zoom out. This paradox was coined by a German political scientist named Elisabeth Noelle Neumann. She noticed that in public discourse, people often avoid expressing opinions if they believe they are in the minority. Over time, this silence reinforces a false consensus, giving more power to dominant views, not because they are right, but because they are unchallenged. It is a social feedback loop with one setting: mute. Think about moments when things feel universally agreed upon. That one trend everyone suddenly loves. That one phrase everyone repeats like gospel. That one rule at work that nobody likes but nobody questions. They may not actually be popular. They may just be unchallenged. Now let us get more personal. How many times have you held back a comment in a meeting, even though you knew it was important? How many times have you clicked out of a conversation online because you did not want the hassle? How many times have you gone along with a decision and told yourself, I will say something next time? There may not be a next time. The spiral eats opportunities, and it feeds off hesitation. And the worst part, it rewards silence. When you say nothing, people smile at you. When you keep your opinion to yourself, no one argues. You feel peaceful, but it is fake peace. It is the peace of inaction, of bottled tension and hidden dissent, of a room full of people secretly disagreeing with each other while discussing brunch. The spiral of silence does not need censorship. It does not need oppression. All it needs is doubt. All it needs is you thinking, I must be the only one. You are not. You are never the only one. Let us make it weird. Imagine your thoughts as candles. Now imagine a room full of people, each holding an unlit candle, waiting for someone, anyone, to light theirs first. But no one does, because everyone assumes they are alone. The spiral wins. The room stays dark. Now imagine one person strikes a match, a small flame, a quiet sentence. I disagree. Suddenly another candle lights, then another, and the room begins to glow. That is how it breaks. Not with shouting, not with arguing, just one voice. But no one tells you that. They just show you the risk, the uncomfortable silence, the awkward glance, the possibility of being labeled difficult, emotional, or one of those people. So you hush yourself. You self-edit, you shrink, and the spiral whispers, "Good choice." But you feel it, deep down, the sting of your own silence. The moment you traded truth for comfort. You go home, you replay the moment. You imagine what you would have said, what you could have said, and that echo stays with you longer than the conversation ever did. Now let us talk about the internet. You would think the spiral of silence would die online, where people can hide behind usernames and avatars and weird anime profile pictures. But no, it thrives, because the loudest voices dominate. The majority appears larger than it is. And you, sitting in your room, think, better not get involved. And the spiral deepens. It lives in algorithms now. It hides in comment sections. It echoes through retweets. It says, "This is the dominant opinion. Act accordingly." And most people do. They nod, they scroll, they say nothing, because silence is easier than consequence. But that ease comes with a price. It bends the world. It twists perception. It turns personal truth into private torment. So what can you do? Well, you can speak. Once. Quietly. When it matters. Not to argue. Not to dominate. Not to win. Just to exist. Just to let someone else know they are not alone. Because breaking the spiral does not require a speech. It just needs a crack, a breath, a word. And suddenly the room shifts. Suddenly someone else speaks. Suddenly the air feels lighter. You did not change the world, but you changed the moment. And that is enough. So as your body settles and the night tucks itself around you, remember this. Your silence may feel safe, but your voice might be the permission someone else is waiting for. You are not alone in your thinking. You are just surrounded by people pretending the same thing. And the next time someone says something obviously wildly wrong about politics, pizza, or the ice bucket revolution, maybe you will clear your throat. Maybe you will say something. Maybe you will smile and say, "Actually, I think the opposite." And sure, it might get awkward. But awkward is temporary. Silence lasts longer. Especially when you are the one stuck listening to your own unspoken sentence on a loop for the next 17 years. Now drift off. And if you dream of speaking out and your voice suddenly disappears, do not worry. That is not a nightmare. That is just your subconscious replaying high school. Group polarization. Why reasonable people turn into extreme sandwiches. You were not always like this. You used to be moderate, balanced, a creature of compromise. You believed that people had good intentions. You liked lukewarm takes. You said things like, "Well, both sides have a point," and meant it. Then one day, you joined a group. A simple, harmless group, maybe a book club, maybe a fandom, maybe a Facebook community dedicated to ranking sandwiches. You agreed on one small thing. Turkey was slightly underrated. That was it. But a few weeks later, you were designing digital propaganda declaring ham a threat to civilization. You had a slogan, you had a font, you had a hoodie. What happened? Group polarization. That is what happened. It is the paradox of becoming more extreme after talking to people who agree with you. It sounds backwards, but it is not. It is human. You step into a group thinking, "I kind of like this thing." You leave thinking, "Anyone who does not like this thing deserves exile and possibly therapy." Group polarization does not just turn the dial up. It rips the dial off the wall, throws it into a lake, and replaces it with a megaphone. It is not about changing minds. It is about sharpening them, pointing them, weaponizing them. And the scariest part? You do not notice it happening. You think you are just refining your view. You think you are just passionate. You think you are still you. You are not. You are now the advanced version, you 2.0, but with fewer doubts and more charts. Let us look at how it works. You join a discussion. Everyone leans slightly in one direction. You want to fit in. So you agree, but not just agree. You go a bit further. You say something bold. Someone else hears that, and they agree, and go further still. Before long, the group is a parade of increasingly confident hot takes. The people in the group feel smarter. They feel more united. They feel righteous. But they are also spiraling. They are no longer examining the topic. They are amplifying it. And soon, you are building a shrine to your opinion and refusing to let anyone wear neutral colors in your presence. Now zoom out. This does not just happen in weird sandwich groups. It happens in politics, in religion, in activism, in health advice circles, in parenting forums, in fitness subreddits. Someone starts with, maybe screen time is not great for toddlers, and 3 weeks later they are raising feral children in the woods and speaking only in organic, root-based symbols. It escalates quickly. Why? Because agreement feels good. It feels warm. It feels safe. But plain agreement gets boring. So you escalate. You make the argument sharper, louder, more certain, and everyone else claps and nods and says, exactly. And the feedback loop begins. The middle disappears. Nuance evaporates. You are no longer having a conversation. You are performing a loyalty test, and you better pass. Because if you hesitate, even for a second, you become suspicious. You are not with us enough. You are not true enough. You are accused of fence-sitting or being soft or being a secret ham sympathizer. So you double down. And now you are trapped in a group that rewards exaggeration and punishes thoughtfulness. This is the cost of polarization. It takes reasonable people and turns them into unreasonable factions. And everyone thinks they are the exception. Everyone thinks they are the voice of reason in their group. Everyone thinks, we are passionate, but they are radical. Cute. But the truth is, groups do not just radicalize the fringe, they radicalize the middle. They do it subtly. They do it gradually. They do it with emojis. Let us make it personal. You once believed in moderation. But you joined a group that said, people who disagree are dangerous. So you stopped listening. You stopped asking. You started defending things you had not even questioned. You built an identity out of your stance, and you stopped remembering how you got there. You were not brainwashed. You were socialized. You were praised. You were rewarded for certainty. So you got louder, not because you changed, but because it felt right, and everyone else was doing it. And nuance is lonely. Now let us get scientific. Group polarization has been studied since the 1960s. Psychologists noticed that when people discussed an issue with like-minded peers, their opinions became more extreme. Not just firmer, extremer. Even risk tolerance changed. If people were already leaning cautious, the group discussion made them ultra-conservative. If they were already leaning bold, the group made them reckless. The group did not average their views. It amplified them. It picked a direction and stomped the gas pedal. And it is not just a psychological curiosity. It has consequences. It shapes policy. It distorts media. It creates echo chambers where facts are filtered and feelings are fed. And it is profitable. Extremes generate clicks. Outrage sells. Hot takes get attention. Moderate reflection gets a polite yawn and 3 likes. So the system feeds the spiral. And you, dear reader, are the battery. You power it every time you say, that was a bit much. But I kind of agree. You feed it when you laugh at the meme, but still share it. You build it when you reward people for being louder instead of being smarter. But all is not lost. There is still a way out. It is not easy. It feels weird at first, but it works. You talk to people who disagree. You listen. You ask questions without preparing rebuttals in your head. You say things like, I had not thought of it that way. You practice the ancient art of not needing to be right every time. You trade in your outrage for curiosity. You remember that being thoughtful is not weakness. And slowly the volume drops. The edges soften. You do not become less passionate. You become more human. So tonight, as you drift into that strange twilight space between awareness and sleep, ask yourself, what have you become more extreme about? What did you once feel flexible about that now feels sacred? Was it truth? Or was it comfort? Was it curiosity? Or was it applause? And if you want to rebel, try balance. Try boredom. Try saying, I am not sure. It might not go viral, but it might make you feel sane again. And if someone accuses you of being too moderate, smile and remind them that the middle is not empty, it is just quieter. Now close your eyes. And if you dream of starting a revolution over your sandwich opinions, just remember one thing. Nobody ever wins a war over mayonnaise. Feedback inhibition, the paradox of getting worse by getting better. Let us begin in a laboratory. A scientist in a white coat is adding a drop of something to a beaker. Bubbles rise. There is a chart, maybe even a clipboard. The experiment is working. Things are moving in the right direction. The data is clean. Then something strange happens. The process slows down, not because of failure, but because of success. That is feedback inhibition, the scientific version of "you are doing so well that we are going to stop doing it." Now, let us translate that into real life. You are finally getting your life together. You eat one healthy meal. You go for one walk. You clean your inbox with the precision of a surgeon and the pride of a conquering emperor. And then, you relax. You say, "Look at me go." You reward yourself. You eat a celebratory muffin the size of a human head. You leave dishes in the sink because you earned it. You stop walking because you are not lazy anymore. And just like that, the momentum dies. The system halts. You got better, so you stop trying. Congratulations. You have just experienced the everyday version of feedback inhibition. It is not just biology. It is a lifestyle. It is the tendency for improvement to trigger complacency, which then causes regression. A loop. A perfect little self-canceling machine. The better you do, the less you feel the need to continue. And soon, you are back where you started. Only now with the added shame of having briefly risen above it. Let us look at the biological origin for a second. In your body, feedback inhibition happens when a product of a process tells the process to stop. For example, if your body makes a hormone and then that hormone builds up, it tells the system, "We have enough, thanks," and shuts it down. Efficient, smart, but also kind of annoying when applied to everything else in life, like motivation, discipline, progress, self-improvement. You try, you improve. The improvement itself becomes a reason to stop, and slowly, invisibly, you slide back down the hill. Then one day you look around and wonder, did I not used to be good at this? Yes. Yes, you did. Until you got good enough to stop. You got so comfortable with your improvement that you gently sabotaged yourself without even noticing. That is the paradox. Progress kills pressure. And without pressure, progress stalls. Let us get specific. You finally start budgeting. You track your spending. You cut back. You save money. You feel like a financially responsible adult. And then, you relax. You splurge a little, then a little more. You do not check the app anymore. You buy a light-up indoor waterfall because it sparks joy. Now your finances are worse than before, but your apartment sounds like a small river. Same with health. You lose a few pounds. You feel great. You skip a workout. Then two, then all of them. You order celebratory sushi, then celebratory cake, then post-celebration pancakes. Your treadmill becomes a coat rack. And there you are, full circle, even relationships. You make effort, you communicate, you listen, you stop interrupting, it works. The connection improves. You both feel seen, so you stop trying. You stop the long talks. You stop checking in. You figure, we are good now, and slowly, you are not. Because the effort that made it better was mistaken for the default. And now the default is drifting, because that is what humans do. We mistake improvement for permanence. We treat success like a destination, not a practice. And the second we see results, we loosen our grip, because we believe we have fixed it. But nothing stays fixed by itself. That is the quiet cruelty of feedback inhibition. It punishes success with silence. You no longer feel the urgency, so you no longer act, and your system, whatever it is, body, brain, budget, starts to revert. And you feel confused, because it is not like you failed. You just paused, but the pause turned into a stop. and the stop became a slide. Let us make it weirder. Imagine a fire alarm that stops ringing the second the fire goes out, and then turns off the sprinkler system, so the fire can start again, just to trigger the alarm again. That is what you are doing. You are the fire. You are the alarm. You are the sprinkler system. You are very efficient and very unhelpful. Let us talk about systems. Systems crave balance. When they reach a certain level, they self-regulate, which is great for hormones, but terrible for habits. Because growth requires discomfort. And feedback inhibition says, discomfort, we solve that, shut it down. And so the pressure that pushed you forward disappears. And without that pressure, you drift, you coast, you assume you are fine, until you are not. And then you have to start again, but with less energy than the first time. Because now you remember the cycle. And it feels like futility, but it is not. It is just unmanaged momentum. So what do? You accept it, you expect it, you plan for it. You stop treating success as a finish line and start treating it like a rhythm, a maintenance plan, a thing that needs constant tuning, like a garden or a cat or your own sanity. You remind yourself that the reward for doing something well is doing it again. You build routines that do not rely on emergency motivation. You let consistency win over novelty. You aim for boring, because boring gets things done. Let us reframe success. Success is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of patterns. It is brushing your teeth even when they look clean. It is saving money even when your account says, nice job. It is stretching even when you are not sore. It is apologizing even when no one is mad. It is being better without waiting to feel worse. That is how you beat feedback inhibition. You stop relying on alarms. You stop reacting. You start continuing, quietly, repeatedly, unimpressively. Because progress is not supposed to be dramatic. It is supposed to be sustainable. Now settle into your blanket. Let the lights dim. And as you float towards sleep, remember, just because the fire went out does not mean you should unplug the extinguisher. And if your brain ever tells you, we're doing so well we can take a break, you might want to reply, nice try, Gary. Because your inner Gary is always looking for a way to sabotage your success with a celebratory pizza. And let us be honest, Gary cannot be trusted with pizza. Social loafing, how to disappear in a crowd without actually leaving. Picture a group project. You know the kind. 4 people, 1 deadline, 0 accountability. 1 person takes control. 1 person says they will help but never does. 1 person has strong opinions but contributes absolutely nothing. And then there is you, sitting there, quietly, wondering how this group project became a documentary about your slow descent into existential crisis. You tell yourself, I will not be the one doing all the work. Then you look around and realize, nobody is. Welcome to the psychological swamp known as social loafing. It sounds like something lazy bread might do, but it is not. It is the deeply human tendency to put in less effort when working in a group than you would when working alone. Not because you are bad, but because the group is there to carry you. Or at least you hope someone else thinks it is their turn to carry you. Spoiler, they do not. In theory, teamwork makes the dream work. In reality, teamwork makes a bunch of people sit in a circle pretending they are brainstorming while silently praying someone else will start typing. Let us break it down. Social loafing happens because of diffusion of responsibility. You think, there are 5 of us, I can pull back a little. Then everyone thinks that, and suddenly the whole team is gently, harmoniously, doing nothing. It is like synchronized slacking. Beautiful, elegant, doomed. You have seen it happen. At work, in school, in committee meetings, in spontaneous cleanup efforts after parties. 1 person always ends up holding the metaphorical mop while the others slowly fade into polite invisibility. And the worst part? Nobody ever admits they are loafing. They say things like, I thought you had it. I was giving space for other voices. I was planning to contribute later. Or the classic, I did a lot of emotional labor. Translation, I thought about it once. Let us get scientific for a moment. Social loafing was first studied by a guy named Max Ringelmann in the 1800s. He found that when people pulled on a rope in a group, they each pulled less hard than when they were pulling alone. This was before Zoom, before Slack, before passive-aggressive, just circling back emails. And even then, people were already figuring out how to coast in groups. It is not laziness, it is optimization. Your brain does the math. It sees the group and says, we can turn the volume down. So you become just helpful enough to remain blameless. You nod at the right times. You drop in one idea. You forward the calendar invite. You think, this counts, right? It does not, but it feels like it does. And that is the danger. Because social loafing is not obvious. It is not dramatic. It is subtle erosion. A tiny drop in effort multiplied by everyone in the room. And over time, it adds up to failure. Not big, explosive failure, just mild underperformance. The kind you cannot quite explain. The kind where everyone shrugs at the mediocre result and says, well, we tried. Did you? Really? Because if everyone did just a little less than they could and no one noticed, what was actually accomplished? Let us look at where it shows up. Group presentations, team projects, crowdsourced events, volunteering, brainstorming sessions, surprise birthday parties planned by 10 people and executed by 1, even applause. You ever notice how people clap less enthusiastically when they are in a big crowd? That is social loafing. Your brain says, they are clapping, we can coast. And suddenly the whole room sounds like it is applauding in mittens. Let us go deeper. Social loafing thrives in anonymity. The less visible you are, the more likely you are to pull back. If no one can trace the work to you, your brain says, why bother? This is why group emails often go unanswered. This is why reply all is the Bermuda Triangle of responsibility. This is why certain group chats exist solely to give everyone the illusion of coordination without requiring anyone to actually coordinate. Social loafing also loves uneven accountability. If one person steps up, the rest often step back. You do not even mean to. But your brain sees their effort and thinks, oh good, they have got this. And the weight shifts, not evenly, but quietly. And the person doing the heavy lifting feels it. They do not complain. At first, they just smile through gritted teeth and develop a deep, unspoken resentment for your perfectly reasonable calendar conflicts. So what can be done? Is teamwork doomed? Not necessarily. There are ways to fight the loaf. You make contributions visible. You assign roles clearly. You shrink the group. You check in often. You name the silence. You say, hey, we need everyone on this. You refuse to let diffusion win, because it will try. Every time. It will whisper, you are doing enough, even when you are not. Even when you know you are not. It wants you comfortable, because comfortable people are quiet, and quiet people do not challenge the loaf. So challenge it, not by working more, but by working together, deliberately, transparently, accountably. Treat effort like currency. Spend it where it matters. Let us bring it home. You have been in groups where you worked hard and others did not. You remember the sting. You remember the silence. You remember wondering, why am I the only one staying up until 1 a.m. editing a presentation about organic banana farming? Because you cared, and because nobody else did. So the burden was not shared. It was soaked into your bloodstream. But sometimes you were the loafer. You coasted. You nodded. You said, let me know what I can do, and then mysteriously disappeared into a fog of scheduling conflicts and vague commitments, and you told yourself it was fine. But you knew. You always knew. That is the thing about social loafing. It does not hurt in the moment. It hurts later, when the project underwhelms, when the work collapses, when you look around and realize the group effort was just a group illusion. Now let your eyes rest. Let your thoughts soften. And as you drift into that slow, sleepy space between consciousness and subconscious guilt, remember, Next time you are tempted to disappear into a group project, try showing up. Just a little more. Just enough to make someone else feel less alone. Because if nobody wants to be the only one doing the work, maybe nobody should be the only one doing the work. And if that does not inspire you, picture a loaf of bread. Now imagine that bread sitting in the middle of your team meeting. Now imagine everyone slowly backing away from it. Now imagine you becoming that bread. Congratulations, you are now a social loaf. Broken Windows Paradox. Why one cracked rule becomes a carnival of chaos. It always starts small. One sock on the floor, one dish in the sink, one sticky note that says, "Fix me," on a broken door handle that has not been fixed since 2013. You tell yourself it is no big deal. It is just one thing. But then slowly, beautifully, everything unravels. The sock breeds, the dishes multiply. The sticky note becomes a fossil of good intentions, and now your home looks like a forgotten side quest in a post-apocalyptic video game. That, in psychological terms, is the Broken Windows Paradox. It is the theory that small signs of disorder or rule breaking, left unaddressed, create a larger environment of neglect, leading to more serious rule breaking and eventually full-blown anarchy, or at least ants. The idea comes from criminology, but it applies to pretty much every human system. Cities, classrooms, workplaces, personal habits, group chats, shared bathrooms. One broken rule opens the door for others, not because people are evil, but because people are observant. They see the mess, they assume it is allowed, they join in, and soon the system that was working is now held together with duct tape, good intentions, and 3 people who still vaguely care. Let us take it to the streets. In the 1980s, criminologists James Q. Wilson and George Kelling proposed that visible signs of crime, antisocial behavior, or public disorder, like broken windows, graffiti, or litter, can encourage further crime. Not because of the window itself, but because of what it signals. Nobody is watching. Nobody cares. Do what you want. That is the paradox. The rule that is broken becomes the new rule. The first crack is not just cosmetic, it is contagious. And it does not take much. One broken window becomes a permission slip for spray paint, then trash, then theft, then something worse. You see it and think, well, if nobody fixed the window, why should I follow the rules either? And boom, the spiral begins. Now pull that out of urban theory and drop it into your daily life. Your email inbox. You miss one. You think, I will get it later. You do not. It becomes 2, then 5, then 100. And now your inbox is a digital landfill and you are starring things out of guilt instead of utility. Broken window, your diet. You skip one workout. You eat one treat, then another. Then suddenly your grocery cart looks like it was curated by a raccoon having a midlife crisis. Broken window, your office kitchen. Someone leaves a mug in the sink. Nobody says anything. Another appears. Then a plate. Then a spoon soaking in something suspicious. You used to be civilized. Now you are performing forensic analysis on unclaimed food containers. Broken window. It is not just physical messes. It is social norms. One person interrupts during a meeting. Nobody corrects them. Now everyone interrupts. Soon it is a verbal demolition derby where ideas go to die. One person gossips. Nobody pushes back. Now the whole room sounds like a live taping of High School, the workplace edition. One person comes in late. Nobody notices. Now half the team is drifting in at lunchtime with iced coffee and absolutely no shame. Broken windows everywhere. And you think, should I care? Yes. Because small norms keep big ones stable. They are the invisible scaffolding of civilization. A clean kitchen means mutual respect. An on-time meeting means shared responsibility. A maintained sidewalk means someone, somewhere, still gives a damn. Now let us make it philosophical. The Broken Windows Paradox is not about windows. It is about permission. It is about what happens when the world stops telling you, this matters. You see the crack, You register the silence. You assume the rule is optional. And soon your behavior shifts, not because you believe in chaos, but because chaos feels like the default. You match the energy around you. You lower your standards. You start saying things like, "It is just how things are." You give up, one small surrender at a time. This is how institutions crumble, how relationships erode, how cultures shift from excellence to entropy. Nobody plans it, nobody approves it. It just happens. Because broken windows do not scream. They whisper, and they whisper constantly. Let us get existential. Maybe your life has broken windows. Maybe you stopped making your bed, and now you have not washed your sheets since the last ice age. Maybe you skipped one chore, one call, one appointment, and now everything is overdue and your calendar is a crime scene. Maybe you gave up on a dream because one thing went wrong, and instead of fixing it, you decided the whole dream was cursed. It is tempting to let small failures define big things, but the paradox cuts both ways. Just as disorder breeds disorder, order can reverse the spiral. Fix one thing, just one. Answer one email. Do one push-up. Pick up one sock. Say one kind thing in a room full of sarcasm. You are not fixing the world. You are fixing the window. And that matters, because the window sets the tone. It says, someone is watching. It says, we still care. It says, this is not normal. This is not fine. We can do better. And people notice. They always notice. Now let us get honest. You have broken a few windows, we all have. You ignored a mess. You shrugged off a rule. You decided, not my problem. Then you looked around and wondered why everything suddenly felt worse. This is not about blame. It is about awareness. It is about realizing that every choice is part of the system. Every action is a signal. You are never invisible. You are never neutral. You are always sending a message, whether you mean to or not. So tonight, as you settle under your blanket and feel the gentle hum of exhaustion behind your eyes, ask yourself, where are the broken windows in your life? Which rules have you quietly stopped following? Which standards have you let slip? And more importantly, what would happen if you quietly, stubbornly, decided to fix just one? Because sometimes all it takes is one person caring when nobody else does. One person sweeping the sidewalk. One person closing the tab. One person saying, no, this still matters. And the paradox unravels. The spiral pauses. The system breathes. Now sleep. Rest. And if you dream of walking through a spotless kitchen and seeing your roommate scrubbing that ancient mug with actual soap and human intent, that is not a fantasy. That is called hope. And if it ever actually happens in real life, buy a lottery ticket. Immediately. The Conformity Paradox. How being yourself somehow means being like everyone else. You are standing in an elevator. Everyone is facing the back wall. It is weird. You walk in, hesitate for half a second, then slowly turn around and face the same direction. You do not ask why. You do not even think about it. You just do it. You conformed. Congratulations. You are human, and you have officially entered the swirling absurdity of the Conformity Paradox. The idea that, in the name of individuality, most people spend a staggering amount of time just trying to blend in. You see, humans are social creatures. Beautifully social, tragically social, hopelessly addicted to approval. Somewhere deep in the prehistoric folds of your brain, a voice whispers, do not be the weird one, or you will be eaten by a bear. This voice has not updated in 40,000 years. There are no bears in your office. But still, when everyone else orders sparkling water, you do too. When your friend buys the ridiculous hat, you buy one. When people start using phrases like, we love that for you, and main character energy, you repeat them like a backup dancer in a vocabulary flash mob. Because fitting in feels good, even when it is nonsense, especially when it is nonsense. Let us get scientific. The classic example is the Ash conformity experiment. A group of participants are asked to compare line lengths on a card. The answer is obvious, but the confederates in the group, all secretly in on the experiment, give the wrong answer with straight faces. And then it is your turn. You know they are wrong. But they are so confident, and so many. So you squint. You question yourself. You say the wrong answer too. Not because you believe it, but because they did. That is conformity. It is not about belief. It is about belonging. It is about the strange comfort of being wrong together instead of being right alone. Now let us make it personal. You have conformed. You have changed outfits before going out because you thought, this feels like too much. You have laughed at a joke you did not understand because everyone else was laughing and you panicked. You have liked a movie you secretly hated because your date said it was life-changing. You have adopted a mildly British accent during vacation for no discernible reason. You did not mean to. It just happened. You slipped into the group shape because sticking out feels dangerous. Like wearing neon at a funeral. Even when you are right, standing alone feels wrong. That is the paradox. Everyone says, be yourself. But the second you actually are, the room tilts. Eyebrows raise. Someone says, that is different. And suddenly you are backpedaling into conformity, clutching your weirdness like it is contraband. This happens everywhere. Fashion, language, beliefs, lifestyles. You join a new job. The team wears beige. You wear beige. You join a gym. Everyone grunts. You grunt. You join a book club. Nobody reads the book. You smile and say, wow, what a journey, while talking about the cover. You blend, because blending feels safe. But here is the twist. Everyone else is doing the same thing. Faking normal, pretending to agree, muting themselves. You are all performing uniqueness in the exact same way. The same neutral tones, the same curated social media captions about living your truth. The same list of acceptable quirks, carefully filtered through the lens of social approval. You are a nonconformist in a uniform. You are a rebel who follows the handbook. You are a flaming individual, provided the flame is an approved hex code and burns quietly between 7 and 9 p.m. Let us go deeper. The conformity paradox is not just about actions. It is about identity. You start to forget which parts of you are real and which were added to avoid friction. You wonder, do I like this? Or do I like being liked for liking this? You cannot tell, because the applause drowns out the signal, and you become fluent in fitting in. A master of mirroring. You turn your edges into curves so nobody bumps into you. But over time, you start to disappear. You do not feel fake. You feel vague, like you are living your life on someone else's settings. So what do? Do you break free? Do you start wearing capes to meetings and ordering pineapple juice at beer bars? Maybe. But that is not the point. The point is not rebellion. The point is choice. Conformity is not always bad. It is efficient. It keeps elevators from becoming interpretive dance spaces. It gives you cultural shorthand. It lets groups function. But the danger is when you stop knowing that you are doing it. When you lose the ability to distinguish between adaptation and erasure. When your reflection starts to look like everyone else's and nobody says anything, because they look the same too. Now, let us talk about culture. The conformity paradox thrives in any place with strong norms. Schools, workplaces, families, countries, social platforms. There is a script, there are costumes, there are lines you are supposed to say, and facial expressions that go with them. And you learn them fast, not because you want to, but because not knowing them is expensive. You get left out, mocked, corrected, unfollowed. So you adapt. You do not call it that. You call it growing up. You call it fitting in. You call it finding your tribe. But sometimes, you are just folding yourself smaller to fit the available space. And nobody notices. Until one day you forget what your actual shape was. Let us bring it home. You were born different. So was everyone else. But then you learned that different makes people uncomfortable. So you shaved down your thoughts. You edited your reactions. You learned to smile at the wrong time and nod when you disagree. You called it maturity. You called it social skills. But it was conformity. Soft, polite, relentless. And now you crave authenticity, but fear it. You want to be seen, but not judged. You want to be yourself, but you forgot who that was before you started performing it. Here is a secret. Most people feel the same. Most people are waiting for someone else to go first, to break the pattern, to say, actually, I do not like that, to wear something weird, to ask a real question, to admit confusion. And when you do, something strange happens. Relief. Not just yours, theirs. Because you broke the illusion. You reminded everyone that the room is full of individuals pretending to be a group. And it is exhausting. So tonight, as you close your eyes and let the day fall away like an ill-fitting costume, ask yourself, what parts of you are real? What parts are habit? What would you do if nobody was watching? And what would happen if you did it anyway? Because conformity is not bad, but invisibility is. And the truth is, if everyone is conforming and everyone secretly hates it and nobody says anything, then the only real rebel move left might be honesty. Or at the very least, walking into the elevator and facing sideways, just to see what happens. And if someone joins you and quietly turns the same way, you are either starting a movement or making a very intense new friend. The power paradox, why the people in charge often should not be. You walk into a room. You are not the boss. You are not even the assistant to the boss. You are a sentient coffee mug with opinions and no authority. But then someone speaks. They talk with confidence. They use words like synergy and leverage and pivot as if they were born inside a TED Talk. People nod. Notes are taken. The meeting ends, and everyone agrees to do something vague that nobody fully understands. That person is in charge. You walk out thinking, how did that happen? Welcome to the power paradox, the strange psychological phenomenon where the people who gain power often lose the very traits that made them worthy of it in the first place. It is not just ironic, it is horrifying. It is what happens when kind, empathetic, thoughtful people rise to leadership and slowly, invisibly, mutate into overconfident, lizard-brained ego balloons who forget how doors work. Let us back up. Power, in theory, is a reward for competence. You do good work, you help others, you show leadership, you solve problems, you stay calm during crises and carry extra chairs into the meeting. People say, that person should lead. So you do. And at first it is fine. You delegate, you mentor, you still eat lunch with the interns, and remember what stress smells like. But then something shifts. You stop asking questions. You stop listening. You interrupt more. You mistake your schedule for importance. You become allergic to criticism. And worst of all, you start believing you are the smartest person in every room. Even the rooms you built specifically to challenge you. Because power does not just lift you, it isolates you, it insulates you, it whispers, you earned this, even when you are wrong. And slowly, painfully, you stop being someone people want to follow. You become someone they have to. That is the paradox. Power is given to those who understand others. Then it changes their brain in a way that makes them forget others entirely. Let us go deeper. Studies show that when people feel powerful, their capacity for empathy drops. Not metaphorically, literally. They become worse at reading facial expressions, worse at interpreting emotion, worse at understanding what others are thinking. They gain confidence and lose connection. They speak more, listen less. And the worst part? They do not notice. Because power changes your internal weather. Suddenly, your jokes are funnier, your ideas are sharper, your insights are deeper. Not because they are, but because nobody tells you otherwise. You become the sun, and everyone else wears sunglasses. Now let us apply this. You have seen it. That boss who used to be the kind one, the helpful one, the overachiever with a heart of gold, now walks around with a Bluetooth headset and a scheduling assistant and no visible soul. That teacher who got promoted to principal and stopped smiling That friend who became a manager and now says things like, "Let us circle back during brunch." The traits that earned them power are quietly replaced by traits designed to preserve it. They are not mean, they are just distant, detached, efficient in the way that removes friction and also feeling. And they think it is leadership. They think it is growth. It is not. It is just erosion. Now let us talk about you. Maybe you have power. Maybe not much. Maybe just a little. You lead a team, or a group, or a household, or a family chat where you are the only one who knows how to mute your uncle. You think you are immune to this. You are not. Nobody is. You have made a decision because it was easier than asking for feedback. You have snapped at someone because you were under pressure. You have ignored criticism because they do not understand the bigger picture. You have chosen silence over honesty because it felt more efficient. These are small things, tiny cracks, but they matter. Because leadership is not just about being in charge, it is about staying human while in charge, and that is the hardest part, because the system rewards detachment. People respect decisiveness more than reflection. They reward clarity over compassion. And the higher you climb, the less space there is for doubt. So you pretend. You harden. You stop saying, "I do not know." You stop saying, "That hurt me." You stop saying, "I need help." And now you are not a person leading people. You are a title performing certainty. Let us get weird. Imagine power as a throne. At first you sit carefully. You are grateful. You are nervous. You keep checking if you are worthy. Then, after a while, you forget the weight. You think you deserve the seat. You forget the floor is still there. And if someone points it out, you say, "They are just jealous." Because the throne changes your posture. It makes you taller, but it also disconnects you from the ground. And the ground is where your empathy lives. Let us reframe this. Power is not bad. Leadership is not toxic, but they are dangerous. Like fire, useful, necessary, capable of incredible warmth and incredible damage. You have to tend them. You have to check yourself. You have to keep humility close like a personal bodyguard who slaps your ego every time it forgets how you got here. And if you are not in power, this paradox still matters. Because you give power, you vote, you follow, you praise, you build platforms, you make people feel important, and you forget they are still people. You elevate them. Then get disappointed when they act elevated. It is not just their fault, it is yours. You helped build the throne. And then you wondered why they stopped walking. Let us come back to earth. You are tired. The day is long. You feel small in a world of titles and platforms and microphones. But here is the truth. Real power is not in the seat. It is in the presence, in the ability to stay open when it would be easier to close, in the ability to say, "Tell me more," when you want to say, "Enough," in the ability to hold the room without crushing it. So tonight, as your thoughts slow down and your spine untangles from the postures of performance, ask yourself, who has power over you? And who do you have power over? What have you done with it? What do you wish they would do differently? Are you doing it yourself? Because if power isolates, connection heals. If leadership corrupts, kindness corrects. And if the paradox is real, if the throne always hardens you, then maybe the answer is simple. Never sit too long. And if you must, at least keep your feet on the floor. And if none of that helps, just remember, if someone needs a standing ovation every time they enter the room, they are probably not a leader. They are just very good at walking in dramatically. The Hedonic Treadmill. Why happiness has a short attention span and expensive shoes. You finally get the thing you have been dreaming about. Maybe it is a new job. Maybe it is a bigger apartment. Maybe it is that fancy coffee maker that looks like it belongs in a futuristic science lab and makes espresso so strong it might qualify as a controlled substance. You are thrilled. You are radiant. You make announcements. You post photos. You bask in the glow of your upgraded life. And then, slowly, subtly, rudely, it wears off. The thrill fades, The shine dulls. The espresso still hits, but your existential dread starts sipping it with you. You have just boarded the hedonic treadmill. Welcome. This is the paradox where your happiness, no matter how hard you chase it, keeps returning to the same baseline. You run faster, you upgrade harder, you buy shinier, but the scenery does not change. Emotionally speaking, you are on a treadmill, and not even the fancy kind with Bluetooth and a fake mountain screen. Just the old rubber belt of psychological repetition. Let us break it down. You want something, a promotion, a relationship, a better couch. You believe that once you get it, your life will improve permanently. You picture a future version of yourself smiling forever, bathed in natural light, holding a matcha latte and speaking fluent inner peace. Then it happens, and you are happy for a while. Then you adjust, you normalize. Your brain files it under expected and starts asking for more. You think you are moving forward, but really, you are just resetting your expectations. You upgraded your life, but your happiness stayed behind to read a magazine. Now let us get scientific. The hedonic treadmill theory, also known as hedonic adaptation, suggests that people return to a stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events. Lottery winners? Happy for a bit. Then back to their emotional baseline. People who lose jobs or go through breakups? Sad for a bit. Then, back to baseline. Because your brain is not designed to let you cruise at maximum joy forever. It is designed to survive, and that means adjusting to change, not celebrating it forever. Your brain says, cool, what is next? And the treadmill speeds up. Now let us talk about stuff. Because, the stuff. You upgrade your phone. Then you get used to it. Then you start hating it for not being the next one. You move into a bigger place. It feels palatial. Then it feels normal. Then it feels cramped. You fall in love. You hear angels. Then you hear snoring. Then you hear, did you forget to take the trash out again? It is not that the new thing got worse. You just stopped noticing because novelty wears off. And your brain needs novelty to feel happiness, which is a design flaw. Because modern life runs on repetition, and your brain wants fireworks, but gets spreadsheets. So it searches for upgrades, endlessly. It tells you, just one more zero in the bank account, one more notch on the resume, one more scented candle, limited edition, ethically made from wax only bees with anxiety can produce. Then, happiness. Except, no. Because once you get it, your brain moves the goalpost. It always does. That is the treadmill. That is the paradox. You work harder, run faster, climb higher, just to end up where you started, emotionally. Tired, disappointed, slightly more expensive. Let us make it existential. Maybe happiness is not supposed to last. Maybe it is not a destination. Maybe it is just a flicker, a spark between neutral states. And maybe the problem is not that happiness fades. Maybe the problem is thinking it should not. Let us talk about marketing. The economy loves the treadmill. It feeds it. It polishes it. It sells you sneakers to run on it. Every ad whispers, this will change everything. New phone, new mattress, new meal plan, new scent that smells like what confidence would wear to a forest retreat. And it works. Because hope is addictive. And you are not chasing things. You are chasing a feeling. You want that moment, that burst, that high. And when it fades, you blame the product, not the system. So you buy again, and again, and again, until your happiness is held together with payment plans and return policies. Let us get personal. You have chased the feeling. You have told yourself, once I get this, I will be good. And sometimes you were, for a week, maybe a month. But then it faded, and you thought, maybe I need more. So you chased again. You leveled up. You hit milestones. But you still feel like you are running. Because you are. The treadmill does not stop unless you jump off. But nobody tells you how. So here is an idea. Do not jump off. Slow down. Walk. Look around. Notice things. The ordinary things. Because if your happiness resets after every win, Maybe the secret is to stop basing happiness on winning. Maybe the secret is in the walk itself, in the routine, in the small stuff, in the second sip of coffee, in the dog sleeping like a crescent moon, in the laugh you did not expect, in the Tuesday evening light that does not ask for anything, because if happiness fades, then so does sadness, and boredom, and frustration. The treadmill runs in both directions. You forget the highs, but you forget the lows too. You heal, you rebound, you adapt, and maybe adaptation is not the enemy. Maybe it is the grace that saves you from being permanently crushed by grief, or permanently stuck in dopamine debt. Now let us be honest. You will chase again. You will say, "Not me. I am enlightened." And then you will see a commercial for a chair that doubles as a meditation pod with Bluetooth speakers and built-in tea steam, and you will think, maybe that is what I need. That is fine. Buy the chair. Love the chair. But do not expect the chair to fix you. You are not broken. You are just human. Which means you feel good, then neutral, then bad, then good again on a loop. Like weather, like Wi-Fi, like the universe sighing. So tonight, as your mind begins to cool and the treadmill slows to its natural sleep setting, ask yourself, what did you think would make you happy? What actually did? Was it the achievement or the relief? Was it the thing or the feeling of wanting something and finally getting it? And what if the real joy is not in the arrival, but in the pause, the breath, the moment between I want and I need more? Try to stretch that moment. Make it longer, make it yours. And if it fails, there is always the chair. Just do not buy the warranty. Nobody ever reads those anyway. The rebound effect, when solving a problem, quietly makes it worse. You decide to do the right thing. You switch to LED light bulbs. You drive a fuel-efficient car. You start using that fancy dishwasher setting that promises to save water while simultaneously sounding like a spaceship launching. You feel proud, virtuous, optimistic. You are helping the planet. You are reducing waste. You are part of the solution. Except, you are also part of the problem. Because somewhere, somehow, deep in the wiring of your well-meaning brain, a voice begins to whisper, "You can relax now." So you do. You use more light because the bulbs are efficient. You drive more because the gas costs less. You run your dishwasher every night, half full, because the button says eco. This is the rebound effect, that wonderfully unhelpful paradox where improving efficiency ends up increasing consumption because humans are, above all things, masters of self-justified nonsense. Let us get basic. The rebound effect is what happens when a product or system becomes more efficient, so people use it more often, canceling out the gains. It is like going on a diet and rewarding yourself with cake for eating salad, or installing solar panels and leaving the AC on because the sun is paying for it, or saving money on groceries and immediately spending it on something called smart socks. The point is, efficiency changes behavior, but not always in the direction you think. You save time, so you waste it faster. You save energy, so you double your usage. You cut corners, then add flourishes. It is like plugging a leak and then deciding to throw a pool party. Let us make it visual. You used to turn lights off. Now, with LEDs, you leave them on for ambiance. You used to plan trips carefully. Now, with hybrid fuel savings, you take the long way home because you heard there might be a nice view. You used to shop cautiously. Now, with one-click eco-friendly shipping, you order things just to feel something. Because it is not like I am flying it here. Except you are. Virtually. Repeatedly. With cardboard guilt. That is the rebound effect. It is not about what the tech does. It is about what you do when the tech makes you feel invincible. It is your brain saying, "We solved it," while quietly making it worse. Let us get historical. The idea originated in the 19th century with a man named William Stanley Jevons. He noticed that as coal-burning engines became more efficient, People used more coal, not less, because the cost dropped and demand rose. Economists call this the Jevons Paradox. The rest of us call it oops again, because it keeps happening. Every time you make something easier, cheaper, or cleaner, people use more of it, because ease is temptation in disguise. Efficiency gives you permission. Permission gives you excess. Excess gives you the rebound. Now let us go domestic. You buy a low-flow shower head, you save water, then you spend 20 minutes in the shower having full-blown internal monologues, fighting fictional arguments, and reimagining your entire high school career. You save water until you do not. You switch to cloth shopping bags. You bring them everywhere. Then you start buying more stuff. Because, hey, at least I am not using plastic. You bring home 6 candles, 4 books, a new spatula, and a decorative jar of air. But you feel sustainable, because the bag is made of hemp. This is how you trick yourself. You use one good decision to excuse 5 bad ones, and you call it balance. It is not balance, it is rebound. Let us talk about your phone. It is faster. It uses less energy. It has a dark mode that saves battery and feels cool. So you use it more. You stream constantly. You scroll endlessly. You refresh apps while standing in the fridge wondering what your life has become. You are consuming more than ever, but the screen is dark, so it feels efficient, so it must be fine. Let us get philosophical. The rebound effect is not just environmental, it is emotional. You improve a process, you optimize a habit, you patch a flaw, and then you give yourself slack. You relax. You undo your progress by assuming it is permanent. You pay off your credit card, then you celebrate. With the credit card, you clean your room, then leave one sock on the floor, which somehow invites its entire extended family. You cut out sugar for a week. Then you reward yourself with a moderate slice of cheesecake that could legally be classified as a weapon. You tell yourself you deserve it, because you earned it. You probably did. But that does not mean the rebound is not real. Let us get darker. Sometimes the rebound effect is not just ironic. Sometimes it is dangerous. You install seatbelts. People drive faster. You build safer roads. Drivers get more reckless. You improve medical care. People take bigger health risks. Because the safety net gets stronger, so the fear gets smaller. But fear had a function. It kept the excess in check. Take away the fear, and the excess returns, wearing a nicer suit and driving a hybrid. This is not a warning against progress. Progress is good. Technology helps. Efficiency matters. But it only works if you understand your own psychology. Because the human brain does not like limits. It likes loopholes. And every improvement becomes a loophole if you squint hard enough. So what can you do? You build awareness. You pause before compensating. You notice the voice that says, "We can relax now," and ask, "Can we?" You celebrate the gain without spending it. You see the savings without erasing them. You honor progress by letting it stand, not using it as a step stool for indulgence. Because rebound is not failure, it is habit, and habits can change. Now let us get personal. You are probably guilty. You have done the math. You have saved money, then spent twice as much. You have cut calories, then inhaled snacks to celebrate the discipline. You have saved time and filled it with stress. You optimized one corner of your life and then used that as an excuse to light another corner on fire. That is normal. That is the pattern. That is the dance between progress and permission. But it does not have to be the end. You can stop the bounce. You can feel the efficiency without sprinting into chaos. You can hold the win without turning it into a loophole. You can slow the spiral. Now rest. Let your thoughts slow. The lights are dim. The room is quiet. And if you hear a faint, seductive voice telling you that switching to LED means you can leave every light on like a suburban airport runway, tell that voice no, and if it insists, tell it to go take a long, cold, eco-certified shower, just not for too long. That water-saving nozzle has limits. The Familiarity Paradox. Why repetition makes things lovable, boring, and slightly creepy. There it is again. That song. You did not like it the first time. You did not like it the second time. You did not even know who sang it. But now, after hearing it in the car, in the store, in the elevator, and somehow in your dreams, it has wormed its way into your subconscious like a slightly tone-deaf parasite. And suddenly, you like it. You do not know when it happened. You do not know why. But now you are humming it while brushing your teeth like it was part of your upbringing. That is the Familiarity Paradox in action. The more you experience something, the more you tend to like it, whether or not it actually deserves your affection. This is how pop culture works. This is how advertising works. This is how you ended up putting oat milk in your coffee after mocking it for 2 straight years. Let us start simple. The mere exposure effect is a psychological phenomenon where people develop a preference for things simply because they are familiar with them. That is it. You do not have to like it. You do not have to understand it. You just have to see it a few times, and your brain starts handing it warm towels and emotional trust. It is like your neural system thinks, well, it has not killed me yet, so I must love it. You see a new logo and hate it. It feels wrong, alien, dishonest. Then 3 weeks pass. You stop noticing it. Then one day, you see the old logo again and say, "Ew, that is outdated. That is not taste. That is the paradox." Let us get more personal. You try a new show. It is weird. The characters are stiff. The pacing is off. The lighting looks like it was done by someone who hates humans. But you watch another episode, then another. Then somehow it becomes your show. You defend it. You recommend it. You feel a strange loyalty to a thing you barely tolerated. And if someone criticizes it, you feel attacked. Because it is not just a show anymore. It is familiar. And familiarity makes things sacred, whether or not they earned it. Now let us look at people. You meet someone new. You are neutral, maybe even mildly annoyed. But they keep showing up. You see them at work, at yoga, in your friend group, on social media. They exist, repetitively, and over time you like them more. Not because of shared values, not because of deep conversations, but because your brain has quietly decided, this one belongs here. You develop trust, then affection, then a friendship built entirely on proximity and endurance. It is like Stockholm Syndrome for your social circle. This is how you get work besties. This is how you fall in love with the barista who makes your coffee too fast for meaningful conversation. This is how your playlist slowly turns into an algorithmic cult. Let us go darker. The Familiarity Paradox explains not just love, but tolerance. You get used to things, even bad things, a messy room, a toxic habit, a workplace full of passive-aggressive memos and microwave fish. At first it bothers you. Then it is background noise. Then it is normal. Then you defend it. You say, it is not that bad. Because your brain has confused longevity with legitimacy. This is why people stay in dysfunctional relationships. This is why institutions rot slowly. This is why your favorite chair is held together with duct tape and silent denial. You do not love it because it is good. You love it because it is always there. That is the trap. That is the paradox. Now let us bring in advertising. The entire industry runs on familiarity. You hear a jingle once? It is annoying. You hear it 20 times? It becomes part of your emotional landscape. You see a brand logo once? You ignore it. You see it 1,000 times. You trust it. Repetition creates comfort. Comfort creates attachment. And attachment creates loyalty. To products. To slogans. To corporations that, if you are honest, do not even know you exist. And yet, you feel like you owe them something. Because they were always there. Even when nobody else was. Just you. And that talking gecko. Let us flip it. Sometimes familiarity ruins things. You love a song. You play it over and over. Then one day, it snaps. The charm is gone. The magic has evaporated. And you now flinch when it comes on. Familiarity crossed the line into overexposure. It is like a dinner guest who would not leave. The brain is sensitive to timing, Too little, you do not care. Too much, you reject it. Just enough, you imprint on it like a duckling. This explains your complicated relationship with trends. At first, what is this? Then, okay, I see it. Then, I love this. Then, I will die for this. Then, I hate this and everyone who still likes it. You do not process things. You orbit them in emotional phases. Familiarity is not stable. It mutates. Now let us get existential. What does this mean for identity, for taste, for who you are? If your preferences can be shaped by repetition, what does that say about you? Are you a creature of conviction or a sponge in search of patterns? Probably both. You are not as original as you think. And that is not an insult. That is biology. That is how memory works. That is how survival works. You trust the familiar because the unfamiliar used to kill you, not metaphorically. Actually, if you saw a new berry and ate it, there was a good chance you exploded. Your ancestors who hesitated survived. Now your descendants cannot change font settings without a mild existential crisis. Progress. Let us talk about comfort zones. Familiarity builds them. Repetition reinforces them, and stepping outside them feels like betrayal. Even if your comfort zone is a disaster, even if it is outdated, even if it no longer fits. You would rather stay where things are familiar than risk improvement that feels strange. That is how people get stuck, in jobs, in cities, in hobbies they no longer enjoy, in patterns that do not serve them, because the unfamiliar feels unsafe, even when it is better. So what can you do? You notice the paradox. You ask questions. You ask, do I like this, or do I just recognize it? Is this good, or just consistent? Would I choose this again, if it were new? Because not everything you love deserves your loyalty, and not everything unfamiliar deserves your fear. The familiarity paradox is not evil, it is just lazy, and your brain is lazy, but you do not have to be. Now let yourself soften. Your body is heavy. Your thoughts are quiet. And the next time you hear that song, the one that invaded your soul through sheer repetition, and you start to hum along without shame, just remember, the only reason you like it is because it was patient and a little bit manipulative, like a golden retriever that keeps bringing you the same soggy tennis ball until you give in and say, fine, you win, I love you. And that is okay. Just do not let your couch get away with it too. The Miswanting Paradox. When you get what you want and still feel meh. You plan the perfect vacation. You scroll through dreamy beaches. You pick the hotel with infinity pools and vaguely spiritual lighting. You pack with purpose. You hype it up to your friends. You post about it before you even leave. This, you tell yourself, will make you happy. But then, you arrive. And after the first sunset and the first overpriced cocktail, a strange sensation creeps in. You are not unhappy, but you are not as happy as you expected. You are staring at a turquoise ocean and quietly wondering if your cat misses you, or if you left the stove on, or if this is it. Congratulations. You have just met the Miswanting Paradox, the cruel little twist of psychology where the things you think will make you happy often do not, and the things that actually do rarely made it onto the list. It is not just disappointing, it is confusing, because it means you are not just bad at knowing what you want. You are bad at knowing what will feel good once you get it. Let us break this down gently. Miswanting happens when you pursue a goal, experience, or object that you believe will lead to happiness, only to discover, once you arrive, that the joy is either underwhelming, short-lived, or suspiciously absent. It is like emotional catfishing. Your brain shows you a glowing preview, but when you hit play, it is just you, on a sun lounger, Googling the nearest pharmacy because you forgot SPF 50 and now your thighs look like raspberry jello. Let us blame your brain, because honestly, it deserves it. The human mind is not great at predicting future emotions. It overestimates duration. It underestimates adaptation. It thinks big rewards mean big happiness. But often it is just big effort for small bursts of, oh, okay. You imagine the new car smell. You forget about insurance. You dream of the promotion. You forget about the meetings that multiply like caffeinated rabbits. You want the fancy kitchen. You forget that someone still has to do the dishes, and that someone is definitely you. Now, let us get scientific. Daniel Gilbert and Timothy Wilson, two psychologists with a love for ruining dreams, coined the term miswanting to describe this disconnect between what we want and what actually satisfies us. Turns out, your brain is not just bad at wanting. It is bad at predicting how you will feel when the wanting is over. You think, once I get X, I will feel Y. But the math is wrong, because you forgot about Z, which stands for zoned out, zucchini stuck in your teeth, or zebras, which have nothing to do with this, but now you are thinking about them. That is how fragile emotional forecasting is. Let us look at where it shows up. Relationships. You chase someone. You imagine chemistry, laughter, sunsets. You get together. Then you realize they hum when they chew and have opinions about breakfast cereal that make you question humanity. You wanted them. You did not want this, jobs. You want the title, the office. The moment where people look at you and nod like you matter. Then you get it. And now you are managing spreadsheets, fielding vague emails, and developing a complex relationship with your printer. The joy? Fleeting. The meetings? Eternal. Possessions. You want the shoes. They arrive. They fit. You wear them once and realize they make your feet sound like ducks and your ankles feel like old breadsticks. You put them in the closet and pretend it never happened, but your credit card remembers, experiences. You book the trip. You post the photos. You enjoy the first hour, then the sunburn, the airport delay. The realization that the rustic hotel means no hot water and one pillow that smells like regret. Still better than the shoes. Let us go deeper. Why does this happen? Because wanting and liking are different. Wanting is dopamine. Liking is satisfaction. Wanting is loud. Liking is quiet. Your brain screams for things. But when it gets them, it kind of shrugs and says, cool, what else? And you are left holding a dream like a lukewarm coffee that cost $20 and came in a cup made from recycled seaweed. It is fine, but it is not joy. Let us talk about advertising. The entire industry thrives on miswanting. It sells you the feeling, the vibe, the version of you that exists in a parallel universe where your hair always cooperates and you never spill sauce on white shirts. You buy the thing, you get the thing. Then you go back to being you, same you, just slightly poorer and now the owner of a jade roller you never asked for. This is not cynicism, it is just reality. And it does not mean nothing matters. It just means that happiness is a moving target, and sometimes you are aiming at the wrong one. Now let us get personal. Think about the last thing you chased. A purchase, a goal, a fantasy. Did it deliver? Maybe a little, maybe not. Was it worth it? Hard to say. Because happiness is rarely about the object. It is about the process, the meaning, the fit. You think you want the cake. What you really want is the ritual of sharing it. You think you want the job. What you really want is the feeling of being useful, respected, awake. You think you want the silence of the countryside. What you really want is a break from the noise in your head. And no amount of real estate will solve that one. Let us get existential. Miswanting is not failure. It is feedback. It is your brain saying, we are learning. It is trial and error wrapped in impulse purchases and quiet regrets. It is the emotional equivalent of opening your fridge 6 times and still not knowing what you are hungry for. You are not broken. You are just trying. And trying means getting it wrong sometimes, repeatedly, but hopefully less expensively. So what can you do? Slow down. Notice your wants. Interrogate them. Ask, do I want this or do I want to stop wanting? Ask, what feeling am I chasing? And then ask, where else could I find that feeling? Because sometimes the thing you are chasing is just a stand-in for something simpler. Peace. rest, belonging, a decent laugh. And those things, they usually cost less than plane tickets, subscription boxes, or overpriced sneakers that promise energy return. Now ease into rest. Let your body soften. Let your mind drift past the wish list of emotions you swore would finally make you whole. And if you wake up tomorrow and feel tempted to buy something that promises transformation in just 5 simple payments, pause, breathe, and remember, if you needed it that badly, you would not have forgotten it existed until a targeted ad reminded you at 2:17 a.m. And if that does not work, buy it anyway. Just do not expect it to change your life. Unless it is a toaster that also prints affirmations. That might be worth it, especially if it reminds you not to buy another toaster. The happiness paradox. Why chasing it makes you miserable. You decide to be happy. Today is the day. You light a candle. You open a window. You make a to-do list titled Become Radiant. You drink lemon water with a level of dramatic intention usually reserved for ancient rituals. You whisper things like presence and inner peace to yourself while staring at your reflection in a mug that says gratitude is a practice. You are doing the work. Then a dog barks, your inbox explodes, your toast burns, and someone texts, "We need to talk," without context. And just like that, your happiness collapses like a folding chair at a surprise pool party. That is the happiness paradox. The more you chase happiness, the more it sprints away like it owes you money. It is not just frustrating. It is insulting. You try so hard. You read books, you journal, you make vision boards that require more glue than your emotional stability. And yet, the more you focus on happiness, the more it seems to ghost you. Let us be clear. This paradox is not new. Philosophers, monks, therapists, and very tired bartenders have been talking about it forever. It is the universal truth no one wants to print on a pillow. Happiness does not like being summoned, especially not by someone clutching a calendar, a highlighter, and a scented candle named tranquility fog. Let us break it down. The happiness paradox happens because happiness, like sleep, creativity, and trust funds, tends to show up when you stop trying to force it. You plan for happiness. You organize your life like a spreadsheet with color-coded cells for joy, and then nothing. Because happiness does not respond well to pressure. The moment you decide you must be happy, you are already unhappy about not being happy enough. Now you are 2 layers deep in disappointment. And that is before you even finish your gratitude meditation. Let us talk about modern happiness culture. It is aggressive. It is everywhere. Every app, every post, every product is screaming, "Be happy now, feel better instantly, smile or die." You are not allowed to feel okay. You are supposed to feel amazing, all the time, grateful, present, thrilled to be alive. You wake up tired and groggy. That is a failure of mindset. You feel down on a Tuesday? Maybe you are not manifesting correctly. This weaponized version of happiness turns it from an emotion into a performance. You're not just supposed to feel it, you're supposed to show it. Proof of life, sponsored by filtered selfies and inspirational quotes about living your truth. Meanwhile, inside, you are not sure what your truth is anymore, but you know it involves snacks and wanting to scream into a cushion. You are not alone. Now let us get scientific. Research shows that the more people focus on their own happiness, the less happy they tend to feel. Not because happiness is bad, but because the focus creates pressure. It makes every moment a test. Am I happy yet? Am I happy enough? Why am I not happier about this smoothie? The brain starts running diagnostics every 10 seconds. It is like refreshing a browser tab that refuses to load. Eventually you feel worse, because now you are not just sad. You are sad about being sad. And that is exhausting. Let us go deeper. Happiness is a side effect, not a goal. It shows up while you are doing other things, laughing, connecting, solving problems, dancing terribly in your kitchen. You do not chase it. You stumble into it, usually while looking for your phone charger or talking to someone who makes you forget your phone exists. But the paradox tricks you. It tells you to make happiness the goal. So you start measuring it, tracking it, quantifying joy like it is a stock portfolio. You rate your days. You optimize your downtime. You read articles about which fruits boost serotonin. Soon, you're eating mango like it is medicine, and crying because it did not fix anything. Let us talk about should. You should be happy. That is what the world tells you. You have a roof. You have people. You have coffee. You are not being chased by wild animals. So why are you not beaming with bliss every morning? Because that is not how humans work. Happiness is not a constant. It is not a default setting. It is a spike, a moment, a flash of recognition in the middle of routine chaos. And most of the time you are just fine. Not miserable, not euphoric, just fine. And that is okay. Unless you have bought into the myth that anything less than joy is failure, then fine becomes unacceptable, then you feel guilty, and then you spiral, all because you expected to feel better about your avocado toast. Now let us flip it. What happens when you stop chasing? When you stop demanding happiness from every meal, moment, and yoga pose? You get bored, then present, then surprised. Because happiness shows up like an uninvited guest who brought snacks. It does not knock. It sneaks in through the side door. You do not chase it. You build a life that allows it to land when it wants. Let us get even more real. You have had moments, tiny ones. You did not plan them. They happened. A walk, a joke, a song you forgot you loved. You felt good, and then it passed. But it was real, and it was enough. That is happiness. Not the version with fireworks and confetti and jazz hands, just the version where, for one brief moment, you remembered what it felt like to be exactly where you are. No fixing, no pressure, just breathing, existing, being. Now let us talk about failure. You will not always be happy. Sometimes you will feel lost, tired, stuck. It does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. And the paradox will try to convince you that you are doing it wrong, that happiness is a prize you can unlock with enough effort, enough productivity, enough morning routines that begin at hours nobody should be awake. But happiness is not unlocked. It is witnessed. It is noticed. It is received. It is a side effect of letting life be life. Even when it is messy, especially when it is messy. Now breathe. Let the silence settle. Let your shoulders drop. And as you drift into that strange, sacred place between consciousness and dreams, remember, you are not behind. You are not failing. You are just a person, sometimes happy, sometimes not, spinning on a rock with 7 billion others trying to figure out what mango has to do with serotonin. And if you ever do figure it out, let me know. But do not be surprised if the answer involves socks, a dog, and the smell of something baking. The attention paradox. Why the more you try to focus, the less you actually do. You sit down to work. You light a candle because that is what focused people do now. You make a cup of tea. You open your laptop. You close all the tabs. You take a breath. You are ready. And then, you check your phone. Just for a second. Then your email. Then your calendar. Then you remember that one thing you meant to Google 3 days ago. Then you click a link, then another, then somehow you are reading about the migration patterns of sea otters and wondering why their paws look like tiny hands. You look up. It has been 45 minutes. You have accomplished nothing except acquiring detailed knowledge about aquatic mammals. This is the attention paradox. The harder you try to concentrate, the more your brain slides off task, like butter on a hot skillet. Let us admit it up front. Attention is not what it used to be. Your brain is overstimulated. Your phone is glowing like a digital candy dispenser. Your apps are designed by people who studied psychology, neuroscience, and the dark arts of manipulation. You never stood a chance. but you try anyway. You tell yourself, today I will focus. You make rules. You set timers. You download apps that block other apps. You make to-do lists and decorate them with checkboxes that remain unchecked for moral support. And still, nothing sticks. Because attention, in this modern age, is less like a flashlight and more like a drunk squirrel wearing roller skates during a fireworks display. Let us look at how we got here. Once upon a time, attention was simple. You had a task. You did it. You were interrupted occasionally, maybe a knock at the door, a loud noise, a rogue bird. But for the most part, your thoughts stayed in one place. Now your brain is juggling 100 invisible pings, text messages, Slack notifications, ads that autoplay with the volume on for no reason other than cruelty. Every site screams for your eyes. Every platform gamifies your attention like it is some sort of points-based hostage situation. And you? You are the exhausted referee. Let us get scientific. Your attention span has limits. Cognitive psychologists estimate that your brain can only handle one high-focus task at a time. Multitasking is mostly a myth. What you are really doing is task switching, rapidly, repeatedly, stupidly. Every time you switch, you lose a little time, a little energy, a little depth. It is like trying to read a novel by changing books every paragraph. Eventually, nothing makes sense, and you begin to question not just your focus, but your entire life. Now let us talk about willpower. You think the problem is discipline. You think you are lazy. You are not. You are distracted. There is a difference. Discipline implies control.
Distraction implies war. And right now, you are fighting an army of algorithms with nothing but your frontal cortex and a mug that says, "Get stuff done." Let us be honest. You want to focus. You want to write the thing, read the thing, build the thing. You want to do deep, meaningful work. You want to emerge from your flow state like some kind of productivity demigod.
But instead you emerge with crumbs on your shirt, 17 open tabs, and no memory of what the original task even was. That is the paradox. The more you focus on focusing, the more you notice how unfocused you are. And then you start performing attention. You sit very still. You squint. You move windows around. You reread the same sentence 3 times, as if that will summon meaning. Meanwhile, your brain is in a hammock, sipping distraction like it is a fruity cocktail. Let us go deeper. Why is attention so slippery? Because your brain is not designed for this world. It evolved in a place with trees and weather, and maybe the occasional bear. It did not evolve to handle Reddit, emails, TikTok, and Slack at the same time, while trying to finish a report about quarterly projections. Your brain is overstimulated, overwhelmed, overcooked. And when that happens, it shuts down. It retreats. It drifts. You think it is rebellion. It is just self-preservation. Let us talk about guilt, because the guilt. You blame yourself. You beat yourself up. You think, if I were better, I would be able to focus. But this is not about character. It is about capacity. You are trying to pour boiling water into a cup made of rice paper. Of course it is leaking. Let us talk about tricks. You have tried all the tricks. Pomodoro, forest apps, noise-canceling headphones, lo-fi playlists with names like Focus Wave, Alpha, Theta, Productivity, Juice Volume 2. Some of them work. Briefly. Then the novelty fades. Then the itch returns. Then you are back to staring at your cursor like it just insulted your ancestors. Because the problem is not the tools. It is the expectation. You expect your attention to behave like a tool. Neat, sharpened, available on demand. But attention is not a tool. It is a relationship. You have to nurture it, feed it, give it rest. You cannot scream, "Be productive," and expect your brain to bow like a well-trained butler. Let us reframe this. Maybe attention is not about force. Maybe it is about environment. Maybe it is about curiosity. Maybe it is about doing less so you can go deeper. Maybe your brain is not broken. Maybe it is just tired of pretending it is a machine. Now let us get personal. Think of the last time you were focused. Truly focused. Maybe you were absorbed in a task. Maybe you were laughing with a friend. Maybe you were building something, writing something, fixing something. You lost track of time. You forgot to check your phone. You were there. Fully. That is what attention wants. Not pressure. Presence. The kind that shows up when you stop performing and start participating. So, what can you do? Simplify. Turn off what you can. Mute more things. Create space. Not just physically, mentally. Give yourself time to sink. Because attention does not sprint. It wades. It waits. And when it is ready, it shows up. Now let the room soften. Let the noise drift. Let your eyes rest. And if tomorrow you find yourself opening your laptop to work, only to spend 20 minutes reading about sea otters again, do not panic. Just close the tab. And maybe, just maybe, open one called Get Stuff Done Volume 3. You know, the one with flutes and thunder sounds and the illusion of control. It probably will not help, but it does have a really good baseline. The Social Comparison Paradox. Why everyone else always looks happier, but probably is not. You are scrolling. Just a quick break, you tell yourself. Just a minute. Then you see it. Someone's vacation. Perfectly lit. Ocean background. Abs. Laughter. A suspiciously aesthetic coconut. Swipe again. Someone's engagement. A diamond the size of your childhood dreams. Two people smiling like their teeth were hand-polished by angels. Swipe again. Someone's dog. Dressed better than you. With more followers. And suddenly, your day is ruined. Your lunch tastes like regret. Your job feels inadequate. Your reflection in the screen looks like it just read your bank account. Welcome to the Social Comparison Paradox, the uninvited daily brain circus where measuring your life against others somehow makes you feel smaller, even when you are doing just fine. Let us begin with a bitter truth. Humans compare. Constantly. It is hardwired. Our prehistoric ancestors looked at someone else's cave and thought, wow, that rock arrangement is way better than mine. I need to step it up. This impulse helped us survive. It kept us competitive, alert, motivated. But now it just makes you feel bad while staring at Sharon S. Instagram story of a brunch that clearly cost more than your rent. Let us break it down. Social comparison is what your brain does when it tries to figure out where you stand in the world. You look around, you notice what others are doing, wearing, eating, lifting, achieving, and you ask, how do I measure up? And that might be fine, except you are comparing your reality to someone else's highlight reel. You know you're behind the scenes. They do not post theirs. You know about your stress, your doubts, the weird sandwich you ate alone on the couch last night while watching a show you are too embarrassed to admit. They post curated joy, polished wins, filtered faces with captions like, feeling grateful and still can't believe it, and this is just the beginning. As if the universe has them on an exclusive subscription plan, so you scroll and shrink. Because suddenly, everything about your life feels too small, too slow, too boring. Even if 5 minutes ago it felt just fine. That is the paradox. Social comparison was supposed to help you grow. Instead, it just makes you feel like you are already late to a race that started without you. Let us go deeper. Psychologist Leon Festinger coined the term social comparison theory back in the 1950s. His idea? People evaluate themselves by comparing to others, especially when there are no clear standards. You do not know if you are successful. You look at someone richer. You do not know if you are attractive. You look at someone with more likes. You do not know if your life is on track. You look at someone with better lighting. And here is where it gets twisted. Your brain tends to compare upward. You do not scroll through people struggling and think, cool, I am doing great. You scroll through people succeeding and think, why am I not that? And it never ends, because the feed never ends. There is always someone fitter, richer, more productive. Someone who journals at 5 a.m. while doing yoga and making a macrobiotic smoothie with a blender that costs more than your car. Someone whose dog has its own brand partnership. Someone who just bought a house and says things like, manifested this, even though they definitely had help from parents named Linda and Greg, who just wanted to give them a little head start. And meanwhile, you are wondering if you can afford extra guacamole. Let us get personal. You have done it. You have seen someone's post and felt inadequate. You have compared your body to theirs, your job to theirs, your relationship to theirs. You saw a smiling couple on a mountain and thought, they must be so in love, even though 5 minutes before that photo they were probably arguing over who forgot the granola bars. You do not know their context. You only know your reaction, and it feels real. But it is not the whole story. Now let us flip it. You are part of someone else's comparison game. Someone looks at your photo, your post, your mildly filtered moment of joy, and feels what you just felt. They think you are winning. They think you have it figured out. They do not know you were crying in the bathroom 20 minutes before that picture, or that your smile was forced, or that your peaceful morning was actually just a break in the chaos. We are all doing this, performing, comparing, shrinking, trying to keep up with illusions that nobody actually believes, but everyone still participates in. Because the paradox feeds itself. It grows on silence. Now let us talk about the shoulds. You see someone's life and suddenly you have new shoulds. I should be farther along. I should be married by now. I should have more money. I should look better. These shoulds are rarely your own. They are imported, installed without consent, updated daily by the algorithm, and they replace your actual desires with borrowed ambitions. You stop asking, what do I want? You start asking, what do they have that I do not? And then you chase it, blindly. Because the chase feels urgent, but it is not even yours. That is the worst part. You are not just comparing. You are comparing using someone else's script. Let us reframe. What if social comparison could help? What if instead of envy, you used curiosity? Instead of, why do they have that and I do not? You asked, do I even want that? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the thing making you feel small is not even aligned with your values. You do not want the boat. You do not want the startup grind. You do not want the aesthetic office with the acrylic chair and suspiciously expensive wall calendar. You just thought you did, because you saw it enough times. Let us get practical. You will compare. You are human. But you can interrupt it. You can pause the scroll. You can name the feeling. You can say, that is envy. Then ask, is it real or is it reaction? You can get specific. Not just, they are successful, but what are they doing that makes me feel this way? And do I actually want that, or just the feeling I think it would give me? And most of the time, the answer is the feeling. Peace, connection, confidence, stability, belonging. Things no photo can guarantee. Things you build slowly, without hashtags. Now let your eyes rest, let your thoughts exhale, and remember, most of the people you compare yourself to are doing the same thing. They are looking at someone else. They are feeling not enough. They are wondering if they are late, behind, stuck. But they are not. And neither are you. So the next time you see someone's perfect vacation, remember, there is probably sand in places it should not be. And the coconut? It was $14.95 plus tax. The Authority Paradox. Why people in charge might know less than you think and still tell you what to do. You are at work. A meeting is called. Someone with a title walks in. Their lanyard is shiny. Their voice is confident. Their slides have animations. They say something that sounds important, strategic, possibly made of real words. You are confused. You look around. Everyone else is nodding, so you nod too. Because this person is in charge, they must know what they are doing, right? Welcome to the Authority Paradox, that slightly soul-crushing phenomenon where the people with the most power often speak with the most certainty, and sometimes the least accuracy. It is not always sinister, it is not always dangerous, but it is almost always weird, because deep down you know the truth. Authority does not always equal wisdom. Sometimes it just equals volume, seniority, or the ability to say things like low-hanging fruit without bursting into flames. Let us break this down like a badly laminated org chart. Authority is useful. In theory, we need structure, leadership, someone to break ties, set direction, and occasionally approve your time off without requiring a blood oath. But the paradox begins when we start confusing confidence with competence. When someone says something with enough polish, enough certainty, enough synergy-flavored confidence juice, you start to believe it, even if it makes no sense, even if it directly contradicts facts, even if 5 minutes earlier you knew it was wrong. You forget, because authority feels like truth. And truth, as it turns out, is very suggestible when said by someone in a tailored blazer with a quarterly budget. Let us get scientific. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram conducted a now famous and kind of disturbing experiment on obedience. Participants were told by a man in a lab coat to deliver electric shocks to another person whenever they answered a question incorrectly. The shocks were not real. But the participants did not know that. Most of them obeyed, even when the person on the other side screamed, even when they begged, even when they fell silent. Why? Because the man in the lab coat said it was okay, because he looked official, because authority overrides instinct. That is the paradox. You stop thinking. You start following, because someone else seems like they have a plan, even when they are clearly winging it. Let us bring it closer to home. You have seen it. A boss makes a decision that makes no sense, but they say it confidently. They reference a metric. They mention stakeholder alignment. You feel a twinge of doubt, but nobody else speaks. So you go along, and now you are part of it. Part of the nodding, part of the approval, part of the PowerPoint that explains nothing but still somehow lasts 42 minutes. This is how bad ideas become company policy. Let us talk about uniforms. Because authority often wears a costume, a badge, a robe, a headset, a logo. People follow symbols, not because the symbol knows more, but because it represents order, certainty, hierarchy. If someone in a lab coat tells you to do something, you might. If someone in a hoodie says the same thing, you ask for sources. The lab coat did nothing, but your brain trusts it, because authority looks official, even when it is just theater. Now let us go personal. You have followed bad advice. You have believed someone because they sounded sure. You took a course. You followed a leader. You downloaded a productivity app that required 3 hours of setup and promptly made your life worse. And then you thought, maybe I am the problem. You were not. You were just under the influence of authority. It happens. To smart people. To careful people. To people who just want to get through the day without causing a scene. You listen. You defer. You regret. That is the cycle. Now let us talk about titles. Titles create distance. You meet someone with a title and you automatically lower your own input. You think, they know more. They might, but not always. Sometimes they are just earlier in the timeline. Sometimes they are louder. Sometimes they are related to someone with the same last name and a well-timed retirement. The point is, authority is not always earned. Sometimes it is inherited. Sometimes it is accidental. Sometimes it is a technicality wrapped in a lanyard and blessed by an outdated job description. Let us talk about certainty. People crave certainty. They want answers. Clear ones, strong ones, so the person who sounds sure gets attention, even if they are wrong, especially if they are wrong with charisma. This is how cults happen. This is how snake oil gets bottled. This is how someone convinces you that investing in personalized NFTs for dogs is a sound financial strategy. It is not logic, it is tone, delivery, presence. And your brain, starved for stability, says, "Sounds good." Then your wallet screams, "Let us get existential." The authority paradox is not just about others, it is about you. You have authority somewhere, over someone, a team, a child, a group chat where you are the only one who remembers birthdays, and you have made decisions based on vibes. You have guessed. You have pretended to know. You have said, "Because I said so," when what you meant was, "I have no idea, and I am tired." That is normal, but it is also the reason the paradox works, because nobody knows everything, but we treat people like they do, and they start believing it. And then the costume sticks. And then they forget how to say, "I do not know." And now everyone is faking it, together, in harmony. Let us reframe. Authority is not bad. Structure is not evil. But unchallenged authority? That is where the trouble starts. You have to question. Not aggressively, not disrespectfully, just thoughtfully. You have to notice when someone is using power instead of reason, when they are using certainty as a shield, when they are leading with ego instead of logic. You have to listen, then verify. Because blind obedience is not loyalty. It is fear in a nice suit. Now let the noise fade. Let your thoughts cool. And the next time someone in charge says something that sounds off, pause, breathe, ask a question. And if they say, "We are pivoting our core competencies to align with scalable disruption strategies," feel free to respond with, "Ah yes, classic nonsense." And then quietly Google sea otters wearing lab coats, just to remind yourself that not all authority is well dressed. Some of it is just adorable chaos with tiny, slippery hands. The Loss-Aversion Paradox. Why losing hurts more than winning feels good. You open your banking app. Everything looks fine, nothing unusual. Then you notice one transaction. It is not big, just a little unexpected charge. Maybe a subscription you forgot. Maybe a sneaky service fee. Maybe a digital curse placed on you by your past self who thought, "Free trial, what could go wrong?" Suddenly your day is ruined. Your heart rate rises. Your jaw clenches. You are angrier than you have any logical right to be. You feel like the universe personally targeted you and charged interest. This is loss aversion, the delightful psychological trick where losing something hurts way more than gaining that same thing would feel good. It is not fair. It is not rational. It is just how your brain handles value. Let us put it simply. Losing $20 feels worse than finding $20 feels good. Mathematically, those are equal. Emotionally, they are not even close. That is the paradox. The pain of losing something you already had outweighs the pleasure of gaining something new. Let us get dramatic. If you find a $10 bill on the ground, you smile. Maybe you feel lucky. Maybe you think, "Nice, coffee is on the universe today." But if you lose a $10 bill, you retrace every step. You accuse innocent bystanders. You search your jacket like a detective who just realized the killer was in the room the whole time. It is not about the money. It is about the feeling. Loss is sticky. It lingers. It whispers. It starts small and then spirals into emotional bankruptcy. Let us talk brains. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that the part of your brain that lights up during loss, the amygdala, responds far more intensely than the areas activated by gain. Basically, your brain has a tiny accountant with a very short fuse who screams every time something valuable disappears. And this accountant does not care about logic, only about panic. Let us go practical. This is why you hold on to things you do not need. Old clothes, subscriptions, toxic relationships. That blender you have not used since 2009, but still defend like it is part of your emergency exit strategy. You do not keep them because you love them. You keep them because throwing them out feels like losing something. And your brain hates that. Even when it is just expired spices and emotional clutter, let us get darker. Loss aversion fuels anxiety. You think more about what you could lose than what you might gain. You stay in bad jobs because the risk of quitting feels bigger than the potential of something better. You stay quiet in meetings because speaking up could mean embarrassment, even though it could also mean progress. You avoid opportunities because failure feels worse than success feels good. So you settle, you protect, you hesitate, and you call it being careful. But really it is fear wearing a blazer. Now let us bring in money. Loss aversion is why investing is so hard. When your stocks go up, you feel a little pleased. When they go down, you spiral. Even a tiny dip triggers full-blown existential dread and Googling phrases like how to live without currency. The market could rise 10% and you shrug. It drops 2%. and you are refreshing the app every 90 seconds like you are watching a very slow disaster movie with your entire future at stake. This is why casinos work, why sales tactics work, why marketers say last chance instead of great deal. Because fear of losing out is stronger than the joy of getting in. It is not about value. It is about perception. It is about urgency. It is about tricking your brain into thinking the exit is closing when in reality, there never was a door. Let us talk about relationships. Loss aversion shows up here too. You cling to people who no longer bring you joy because the idea of losing them feels worse than the idea of staying. You stay in almost situations. You justify half-effort connections. You say things like, "But we have history," as if that is the same as a future. Because letting go feels like failure, even when staying is quietly breaking you down one passive-aggressive brunch at a time. Let us flip it. You can use loss aversion for good. If you know your brain overreacts to loss, you can trick it, gamify your goals, put something at risk. Tell a friend, "If I do not go to the gym, I owe you $20. Suddenly your brain wakes up, because now not going feels like losing, and losing is worse than winning is good. So you move, you act, you trick the accountant, you get things done out of fear, but hey, results are results. Now let us go existential. Loss aversion is about identity. You do not want to lose parts of yourself. You protect the version of you that was, even if you have outgrown it, even if you are ready for more. You say, "This is who I am," when what you mean is, "This is who I was, and I am afraid to say goodbye to it." But growth always involves loss, of comfort, of certainty, of old dreams that no longer fit, and your brain will scream. But sometimes screaming means you are on the right track. Let us reframe. Loss hurts. That is human. But it does not mean you are failing. It means you are feeling. It means you are alive. And maybe, just maybe, it means you are doing something important. Because anything worth loving includes the risk of loss, time, energy, connection, courage. You cannot protect yourself from it and still live fully. You can try, but you will end up in a fortress of what-ifs and unopened emails. Now exhale, let the day loosen. And the next time you feel the panic of losing something, money, time, dignity, the last cookie, pause. Ask yourself, was this really a loss, or just change wearing a dramatic cape? Because not all losses are bad. Sometimes they are just clearing space, and sometimes they are just expired spices you finally had the guts to throw out. So if you find yourself mourning a blender you never used, just remember this one thing: that blender never loved you back. The confirmation bias paradox: why you only hear what you already believe and think that makes you smart. You are watching a video. It is explaining something you already agree with. You nod, you smirk. You say things like, "Exactly," to an empty room, as if the algorithm can hear you and is proud. Then, without meaning to, you stumble onto a video that says the opposite. You frown. You squint. You shake your head slowly and whisper, "This is dangerous misinformation." Even if the video just said something extremely mild like, "Pineapple on pizza is okay sometimes." You do not consider it. You do not weigh the merits. You do not say, "Interesting point." You say, "Block, report, tell no one." Welcome to the confirmation bias paradox, the slightly tragic, slightly hilarious mental glitch where the more information you consume, the more convinced you become that you were right all along, even when you are not, especially when you are not. Let us start with the basics. Confirmation bias is what happens when your brain decides that its current opinion is sacred and all new information must either support it or be burned at the stake. You think you are open-minded. You think you are a critical thinker. You think you do your own research. But if that research leads to something you do not like, you close the tab and go back to the article that said exactly what you already believed, only this time with graphs. That is the paradox. You think you are getting smarter.
But what you are actually doing is building a carefully curated echo chamber full of information that agrees with you, nods politely, and never challenges your worldview. Let us get scientific. Confirmation bias is a well-documented cognitive bias. Your brain seeks out information that supports your existing beliefs, and it ignores, dismisses, or aggressively punches anything that contradicts them.
You are not evaluating information objectively. You are filtering reality like it is an Instagram story. Only the flattering angles get through. Now let us bring in your news habits. You watch your preferred outlet. It confirms what you already think. You feel smarter. You say things like, "I am informed." But if someone watches a different outlet and says they are informed, you say, "They are brainwashed." Not misinformed, not partially wrong. Brainwashed, because your source is truth, and their source is propaganda. Because your bias feels like clarity, and theirs feels like a threat. Let us talk about arguments. Have you ever won one? Really? Have you ever calmly presented a well-researched point, delivered it with grace, cited credible sources, and had the other person pause and say, "Wow, I never thought of it that way. You are right. I will now update my worldview accordingly"? No, because confirmation bias does not lose arguments. It digs in. It gets louder. It starts throwing around phrases like common sense and wake up. Because being right feels good, and being challenged feels like an attack, even when the challenge is valid, even when the attack is just facts. Let us look at everyday examples. You believe that people who eat breakfast are more productive, so you notice every study that supports this. You ignore the ones that say intermittent fasting works too. You think cats are smarter than dogs, so you watch videos where cats open doors and dogs fall off couches. You think your favorite celebrity is flawless, so when they do something questionable, you say, "That was taken out of context," while writing a 14-paragraph defense thread on a subreddit full of people just like you. This is not logic. This is bias, and your brain loves it. Because new beliefs take effort. Old ones come with a recliner and a snack. Now let us get uncomfortable. Confirmation bias is why conspiracy theories spread. You hear something wild. You Google it. You find a forum. The forum agrees. You think, if this many people believe it, it must be true. Then you ignore everything else. Now you have a theory. You have charts. You have trust issues. And all because your brain did not stop to ask, "Wait, is this actually true?" It just asked, "Do I like this?" Let us talk about identity. Confirmation bias is not just about facts. It is about self-image. You believe you're a good person. So when you mess up, you find reasons. You blame the situation. You blame the other person. You say, "That is not who I am." But when someone else messes up, you say, "That is exactly who they are." Because your bias protects your identity. It smooths over flaws. It builds fences around doubt. It edits your own story in real time. You are the hero. You are consistent, even when you are not, especially when you are not. Let us talk about relationships. You think someone is great. You focus on their good traits. You excuse the red flags. You say, "Nobody is perfect." You think someone is awful. You notice every little flaw. You interpret neutral behavior as malicious. You say, "I always knew." Same person, different lens. Same facts, different filter. That is confirmation bias. It is not truth, it is direction. You pick the outcome. Then you build a case to support it. Let us get existential. If your beliefs are never challenged, how do you know they are true? If your opinions are never tested, how do you know they are real? If every voice you hear agrees with you, are you learning or just nesting? Confirmation bias makes you feel safe, but growth never does. Growth feels like disorientation, like doubt, like, "Wait, am I wrong?" That is where progress begins, not in certainty, in curiosity. In that uncomfortable moment where you say, "I might not know everything." Terrifying, and also completely necessary. Let us reframe. Bias is not evil. It is human, but it needs supervision. It needs boundaries. You need to question your questions. Ask, "Am I looking for truth or for reassurance?" Ask, Would I still believe this if I grew up somewhere else? Ask, if I were wrong, how would I know? Because wisdom does not come from knowing. It comes from unknowing, from changing, from letting go of outdated ideas and saying, okay, I was off. Not easy, but necessary. Now breathe. Let your thoughts settle. And if tomorrow you hear someone say something that makes your blood pressure spike, do not roll your eyes. Ask yourself, is this nonsense or just unfamiliar? And if it is still nonsense, fine. Delete it from your mental inbox. But if it is not, if it lingers, if it pokes at your worldview, let it. Because the only thing worse than being wrong is never finding out that you were. And the only thing more dangerous than misinformation is being 100% sure you have never fallen for it. Especially if you are still defending that pineapple pizza take. You know who you are. The empathy gap paradox. Why you forget what pain feels like until it hits you again. You are feeling great. Slept well. Ate vegetables. Wore pants without an elastic waistband. A full adult day. Then you see someone struggling. Emotionally, physically, mentally. Maybe they are crying in a grocery store. Maybe they are frozen in indecision. Maybe they are yelling at a printer. You think, why are they being so dramatic? You do not mean to be judgmental, but from where you are standing, life seems manageable. You cannot imagine reacting like that. That is the empathy gap paradox, your mind's charming little glitch where you forget what pain feels like the moment you are not in it, and then act surprised when other people are not handling it like serene monks in silk robes. It is not that you are cruel. You are just comfortable, and comfort makes memory lazy. Pain, hunger, sadness, panic. These states seem absurd from the outside, like overreactions, like weak spots in otherwise manageable lives, until it is you, and then, suddenly, empathy returns, like a wrecking ball wearing fuzzy socks. Let us unpack this. The empathy gap is the inability to relate to your own past or future emotional states, especially intense ones, when you are not currently feeling them. In other words, you are terrible at imagining how you will feel when things go wrong, because everything is fine right now. Your brain is in a good mood, so it edits your history, downplays your breakdowns, forgets how loud it got in your head the last time you were anxious, replaces it with things like, it probably was not that bad. It was, but you cannot remember the texture of it, the way your stomach felt, the pace of your thoughts, the way the ceiling looked too bright and the floor looked too far away. That version of you might as well be fictional. Let us get specific. You are full right now? Then you cannot imagine what hunger really feels like. You are sober? Then you might forget how tempting one more drink can be. You are calm? Then you probably underestimate how chaotic your brain gets when panic hits like an emotional freight train. This is the empathy gap. It affects how you treat others and how you treat your future self. Let us start with the first one. You judge people who are struggling. You do not say it out loud, but you think they should just get over it. Try harder. Drink water. You mean well, but you have forgotten. You forgot what depression does to motivation. You forgot how grief scrambles time. You forgot how anxiety makes the most basic decision feel like defusing a bomb in a blizzard. Because your brain is fine right now, so everyone else's meltdown looks optional. Spoiler, it is not. Let us go deeper. You forget your own lows. You survived a rough patch, maybe a breakup, a job loss, a long period of burnout. You got through it. Now it feels far away. You look back and think, I was so dramatic. No, you were in pain. But now that you are out, you cannot feel it. You cannot access the fear or the fog or the exhaustion, so you minimize it. And then, the next time it returns, you are shocked. You think, why am I falling apart? Because you forgot you were human. And being human comes with recurring subscriptions to emotions you do not want. Let us talk about planning. The empathy gap is why your past self makes terrible decisions for your future self. Your Monday self signs up for a 5 a.m. spin class on Thursday, completely ignoring the fact that your Thursday self is going to be a zombie with an iced coffee IV drip. Your grocery shopping self buys kale, imagining you will become a salad goddess. Then Thursday hits and you eat chips out of a mug with a spoon. The gap between intention and experience is real. You plan with logic. You live with feelings. That disconnect creates mess. Let us talk about addiction. This is where the empathy gap gets serious. When someone is not craving something, alcohol, food, gambling, scrolling, they think, I will never need that again. But the moment the craving hits, logic disappears. The current state takes over. Future consequences get blurry. You cannot imagine the regret clearly enough to stop yourself, because your brain does not remember pain in high definition. It remembers facts, not feelings, and feelings are what matter when you are about to do something you promised you would not. Let us shift to kindness. The empathy gap is why we are so bad at comforting others. We say things like, just relax, stop overthinking. It is not that big a deal. We forget that those phrases do not help. They diminish. They imply the other person is choosing to suffer. They are not. They are experiencing something you are not currently feeling, and so you think it is smaller than it is. But if you were inside it, you would remember how enormous it feels. Let us flip it. The empathy gap works in reverse, too. When you are in pain, you forget what it is like to feel normal. You are convinced it will last forever. You cannot remember joy. You think you are broken. You are not. You are just in it. And in it makes everything feel permanent. But it is not. Feelings shift. States pass. Your memory is just being dramatic. Let us get existential. The empathy gap is not a flaw. It is a function. Your brain cannot fully simulate emotions without feeling them. That is how it protects you. That is how it helps you move forward. But it also blinds you. To others. To your past. To your future. And that blindness can make you cruel, or reckless, or confused, because you forget how fragile you were, how fragile you will be, and how fragile the people around you are right now. Let us reframe. The empathy gap is not a wall. It is a fog. You can still reach through it. You can ask yourself, what did that actually feel like? What will this decision feel like in the moment? What would I want to hear if I were in their shoes? You can remember. You can imagine. You can pause before assuming that everyone else is just being dramatic because you are not currently on fire. Let us be clear. The empathy gap is normal. It is human. But it is also why people feel alone when they are in pain. Because they are surrounded by people who used to understand, and now do not. Because those people feel fine, and forgot how loud pain gets. So tonight, as you rest your thoughts and settle into whatever version of peace you have managed to carve out of your chaotic schedule, remember this. You will not always feel like this, and that is both the danger and the hope. You will forget the pain. That is the danger. But you will also forget the pain. That is the hope. And if you ever forget what sadness feels like, stub your toe at 3 a.m. That should do it. The perception paradox. Why reality depends on who is looking and how sleep-deprived they are. You swear you saw it. You are sure. You remember exactly where it was. You even told someone about it with full confidence, which is the international signal for, I am definitely about to be wrong. But now, you cannot find it. You cannot prove it. You are starting to wonder if you hallucinated the whole thing, or worse, confused it with a dream, a tweet, or a story you overheard in line at the DMV. Welcome to the perception paradox, that charming mental hiccup where what you see is not necessarily what is there, but what your brain thinks should be there. And your brain, it lies. Not on purpose. It lies like a tired parent, out of habit, out of convenience, and sometimes for entertainment. Let us get to the weird part first. You do not see with your eyes. You see with your brain. Your eyes collect light and shapes and color, but your brain fills in the gaps, constantly, automatically, often wrong. Which means reality is more of a rough draft. Your mind edits it, formats it, applies filters, occasionally adds a laugh track. It gives you a final product and says, "Trust me." You do. You should not. Let us play a game. You are walking down the street. You see a person you kind of know across the road. They do not wave. You instantly think, they are mad at me. I must have said something. They hate me and always have. What you do not think, they did not see me. They are nearsighted. They are busy trying to remember where they parked their car and if it is still there. Your perception turned silence into hostility, a blank into a verdict. That is what it does. It completes stories with whatever material is available, which in your case is probably anxiety, 2 childhood memories, and half a podcast. Let us talk about optical illusions. You love them because they break your brain in public and you can blame the image. But really? They just expose the way your brain shortcuts visual processing. It guesses. That spinning dancer that switches directions. Not magic, just your brain deciding which leg is in front based on its mood and whether or not you have eaten. Let us talk about tone. You read a text. It says, "Sure." What do you hear? Is it polite? Passive-aggressive? Threatening? Depends. Depends on your mood, your relationship, and what kind of day you have had. Same word. Multiple realities. Your perception fills in what is not there, with stories, biases, energy levels, sometimes caffeine. Let us talk about memory, because perception does not just shape the present. It rewrites the past. You remember things the way you felt about them, not the way they were. You remember that vacation is magical until someone reminds you of the stomach flu. You remember that ex as a disaster until you see a photo and think, well, except for that one weekend. That was actually kind of fun. You are not lying. You are editing. Your perception plays favorites. Let us go deeper. Your perception is shaped by everything you have experienced. Your culture, your upbringing, your mood, your playlist, your blood sugar. All of it creates a lens. And that lens warps things. You see what you expect, what you are afraid of, what you want to see. That is the paradox. Reality exists, but you never experience it raw. You experience it through filters, through assumptions, through the very weird software that is your nervous system. Let us make it scientific. The brain has to process way too much input at any given time, so it cheats. It uses heuristics, mental shortcuts. It scans for patterns. It fills in blanks. It jumps to conclusions. You see a shadow? Your brain says, probably a chair. You hear a sound? Your brain says, probably the fridge. Most of the time, it is right. Sometimes, it is definitely not. That is why horror movies work. They hijack your shortcuts. They make you question the chair, the fridge, your cat, your own reflection. Let us talk about bias. Perception is not neutral. You walk into a room expecting tension, you will find it. You talk to someone you think is rude, you will interpret their words that way. You believe someone is smarter than you will second-guess your own ideas. Your lens creates your landscape. You do not just react to reality, you shape it as you go. Let us get personal. You have misread things, texts, faces, moments. You thought someone was judging you. They were just tired. You thought everyone hated your haircut. They barely noticed. You thought your presentation bombed. Everyone thought you were confident because your voice shook exactly like a passionate TED speaker. Your perception lied. You suffered for nothing. And now? Now you do not trust chairs or eye contact. Let us talk about smell. Yes, smell. Because nothing shows the power of perception like scent. You smell cookies. You think, home. You smell sunscreen. You think beach. You smell someone's cologne. You are suddenly 17 again and full of rage and eyeliner. It is not the molecules. It is the memories, the context, the brain stitching meaning onto chemistry. Let us talk about music. You hear a sad song. You are fine. Then you remember who you used to listen to it with. Now you are on the floor. Same notes, different ears, same melody, new reality. That is the paradox. The song did not change. You did. Let us talk about dreams. You wake up. You are mad at someone. You know it was a dream, but the feelings are real. Your body believes your perception, even when it comes from your subconscious slapping together a weird story involving your third-grade teacher, a talking walrus, and your taxes. Let us get existential. What is reality? Do not panic. We are not going full philosopher. But think about it. If your brain can distort, omit, inflate, and rewrite what you see and remember, then what is truth? Is it objective? Is it shared? Or is it just consensus-based hallucination? A group project your brain barely participated in? Let us reframe. Perception is not evil. It is necessary. Without shortcuts, you would collapse from sensory overload, just trying to make toast. But it is not always reliable. And that matters. Because it means you cannot always trust what you see, or think, or feel about what you saw, or thought, or felt. Sometimes you are wrong. Sometimes you are the illusion. Sometimes the chair is just a chair. Or not. Hard to say. Now rest your eyes. Let your mind drift. And the next time you confidently walk into a room and swear the chair was facing a different direction, smile. You just caught perception being sneaky. And if you trip over it, blame your reality, not your coordination. Or if all else fails, say the chair came alive and moved itself. That is technically true, from your point of view. The cultural inertia paradox. Why we keep doing things just because we have always done them. You are at a wedding. There is a cake the size of a coffee table, vows that sound suspiciously like Pinterest quotes, and a small child aggressively throwing flower petals like they are in a petal-based street fight. At some point, a man in a suit taps a glass with a spoon and says something about tradition. Everyone nods. Nobody knows what tradition exactly. But it is happening, and it must be honored. Welcome to the cultural inertia paradox, the bizarre little phenomenon where we continue certain habits, rituals, systems, and ideas, not because they are good or useful or even fun, but because stopping would feel rude. This is the same force that makes you wear shoes at the beach wedding, eat dry turkey every Thanksgiving, and pretend to enjoy team-building exercises involving rope. Let us start with the phrase you hear all the time. That is just how we do it. It sounds innocent. It sounds reasonable. But really it is code for do not question it, or the system collapses and grandma starts crying. Cultural inertia is like a group project where nobody knows why the project exists, but everyone keeps showing up because they were told to bring snacks. Let us go deeper. Inertia, in physics, is the tendency of an object to remain in motion or at rest, unless acted upon by an outside force. Cultural inertia is similar. Once a tradition starts, it keeps going. Not because it makes sense, but because nobody wants to be the one who ruins it. You show up to a holiday dinner and someone hands you a Jell-O mold shaped like a pineapple. Nobody eats it. Nobody likes it. But it shows up every year like a sugary ghost. Because to question the Jell-O is to question the fabric of the family. And you do not want to be that cousin. Let us talk about offices. Why are meetings still a thing? You sit in a room, or worse, on Zoom, listening to someone read bullet points that could have been sent in an email you would not have read, but at least you could have pretended to. You are there because it is Monday. Because that is what people do on Mondays. It has been done like this for years, which means it will be done like this until the sun explodes. Cultural inertia loves offices. It wraps itself in lanyards and coffee mugs and synergy, and resists any change that does not come with a pie chart and an executive summary. Let us look at weddings again. You have the white dress, the bouquet toss, the slow dance in front of people who look physically uncomfortable watching you sway. Why? Because it is tradition. Nobody remembers the origin of half these rituals. The veil? Used to ward off evil spirits. The garter toss? Let us not even go there. But we keep doing it. because stopping feels like we are breaking a rule carved into stone tablets by an ancient committee of slightly tipsy ancestors. Let us talk education. Desks in rows, multiple choice tests, bell schedules that make school feel like prison with better snacks. Why? Because that is how it was done before. You could change it, but then people would ask questions. They would feel weird. And feeling weird is worse than being wrong, apparently. So we keep doing it, even if it no longer serves the people it is supposed to serve. Especially then. Let us get a little darker. Cultural inertia is not just quirky, it is dangerous. It is why injustice sticks around, why harmful systems persist, why that is just how it is becomes a wall that nobody wants to climb. Because questioning old rules makes people uncomfortable, and we hate discomfort more than we hate dysfunction. We would rather suffer predictably than adapt awkwardly. So we repeat, even when it hurts, even when we know better, even when we want to stop. Let us talk fashion. Some trends are objectively weird. Low-rise jeans, tiny sunglasses that block no sun, shoes that look like amphibious creatures. But they happen, and then they spread. And then you join in, not because you love it, but because everyone else seems to. And the pressure to conform to how things are is stronger than your own taste. You become part of the inertia, wearing pants you swore you would never wear again. All because the cycle returned. Let us talk holidays. Valentine's Day. You say it is commercial. You say you do not care. But you still panic buy a card at 6 p.m. because not doing something feels like betrayal. Even if nobody asked. Even if your partner said they do not care. You both do it anyway, because the calendar said so. Let us talk language. Phrases that mean nothing, but everyone says them. Let's touch base. Think outside the box. Circle back. New normal. These phrases are cultural Velcro. They stick because they have been said before. They do not clarify. They comfort. They give the illusion of meaning. And the illusion is often enough. Let us get personal. You have followed rules without thinking. You have done things because they were expected. You have sat through ceremonies, filled out forms, worn clothes, said words, not because you believed in them, but because disrupting them felt harder than complying. You have nodded along to traditions that felt hollow. You have swallowed doubts to keep the peace. And that is okay. That is human. But it is also a trap. Because every time you stay silent, the system gets stronger. The ritual gains weight. And suddenly it becomes the way we have always done it. Which is code for, please do not look too closely. Let us reframe. Cultural inertia is not evil. It is just lazy. It is tradition on autopilot. But traditions are supposed to serve us, not imprison us. They are meant to connect, to honor, to celebrate. When they no longer do that, they are decorations, nice to look at, but completely optional. You can question them. You can change them. You can say, why are we still doing this? And if the only answer is, because we always have, that is not an answer. That is a permission slip to leave early. Now soften your shoulders. Let your mind stretch out on the couch of reason. And the next time you're standing in a room participating in something that makes no sense, feel free to lean over and whisper, is this tradition or just momentum in a costume? And if someone answers, both, quietly excuse yourself and go throw the Jell-O mold in the trash. It is time. The Narcissism Paradox. Why thinking you are special might mean you are just insecure and loud about it. You know someone like this. Actually, you probably know several. They walk into a room like it is a spotlight waiting to happen. They start every sentence with I. And if they ask you a question, it is mostly to create a pause long enough to tell you a story about themselves. They have opinions about everything, post selfies with motivational captions, and act surprised when people do not clap every time they breathe. At first, they seem confident, charismatic, successful. Then, after a while, something feels off. You start to notice that their confidence is more of a performance, that their stories always end with them being the hero, that their charm vanishes the moment they are not being praised. Welcome to the Narcissism Paradox, the strange little loop where people who crave admiration the most often have the least amount of real self-worth. It is not about ego. It is about the appearance of ego. And the louder the performance, the quieter the core. Let us start with the basics. A narcissist is not just someone who takes too many selfies or uses the phrase, "I am just being honest," as a weapon. Psychologically speaking, narcissism is a trait, and in extreme cases, a disorder, characterized by grandiosity, entitlement, lack of empathy, and an excessive need for admiration. But here is the twist. Underneath all that confidence, usually sits a trembling pile of self-doubt wrapped in designer clothing and rise and grind energy. That is the paradox. The person who seems most convinced of their greatness may secretly be terrified that they are not great at all. Let us make it clearer. A truly confident person does not need to tell you they are amazing. They just are. They walk into a room like it belongs to everyone. A narcissist walks into a room like it owes them rent. They dominate conversations not because they are full of insight, but because silence makes them nervous. They cannot stand being ignored, disagreed with, or told they might be average. And so they overcompensate, loudly, repeatedly, with hashtags. Let us talk about social media. This is narcissism's playground, the curated feed, the gym mirror pic, the long-winded caption about overcoming adversity by drinking green juice and visualizing success. And the comments. "Oh my God, Queen. So inspiring. You are literally goals." This is not connection. It is audience maintenance. Every like is a validation hit. Every post is a performance. But here is the kicker. Narcissists are not necessarily happier with all this attention. They are just addicted to it. Because without it, the self-doubt creeps back in, and nothing terrifies them more than a quiet moment alone with their actual reflection. Let us go deeper. The Narcissism Paradox explains why some of the most outwardly powerful people are also the most fragile. The CEO who cannot handle criticism. The influencer who deletes comments that do not praise them. The friend who gets passive-aggressive every time you do not respond to their story within 10 minutes. They need control, because control helps them shape perception. And perception is everything, because deep down, they suspect that if people saw the real them, the messy, insecure human version, they would not applaud. And that possibility is unbearable. Let us talk about relationships. Being close to a narcissist is like living in a one-way mirror. You see them, you hear them, you support them, but they do not really see you. You are either boosting their image, or you are in the way. You try to open up, they steer it back to themselves. You express needs, they take it personally. You have a win. Suddenly they are distant, critical, or conveniently in crisis, because someone else's success threatens their narrative. There is only room for one star. Everyone else is part of the entourage. Let us go childhood psychology for a second. Narcissism often develops as a coping mechanism, a response to unmet emotional needs. Some kids grow up feeling invisible, so they learn to demand attention. Others are overpraised but underloved, told they are special, but never given space to be vulnerable. So they build a version of themselves that is invincible, polished, untouchable, and then spend the rest of their lives defending that image like it is national security. Let us pause. Narcissism is not always loud. Sometimes it is subtle. It can look like perfectionism, like never apologizing, like constant need for reassurance that does not sound like need, just strategic compliments fishing. It can be the friend who turns every group activity into a branding opportunity, or the colleague who says team effort, but means I led everything and nobody else mattered. The paradox is this: they want love, badly, but their methods for getting it, control, performance, manipulation, often push people away, which then reinforces the fear that they are unlovable. So they try harder, get louder, post more, get more defensive, and the cycle goes on. Let us talk about you. You have probably had narcissistic moments. You have checked how many people watched your story. You have felt annoyed when someone did not respond to your good news with enough enthusiasm. You have used a compliment as a segue into a story about yourself. That does not make you a narcissist. It makes you human. We all want to be seen. But the line is crossed when the need to be seen overrides the ability to see others. That is when it becomes narcissism. Not confidence, not ambition, just fragile ego in expensive packaging. Let us get existential. The Narcissism Paradox is a warning that the loudest people are not always the strongest, that confidence without humility is just performance, that applause is not love, and attention is not affection. Let us reframe. You do not defeat narcissism by being louder. You defeat it by being real, by being willing to be vulnerable, by not needing to be the star in every scene, by remembering that look at me is not the same as know me, and that knowing someone, really knowing them, requires silence, patience, and the ability to not post about it immediately. Now let your ego rest. Let your brain unflex. And the next time someone posts a shirtless photo with a caption that says, "Healing is not linear," take a breath, smile, and remember, if they were really healed, they would not be saying it mid-flex in front of a ring light. The Exposure Effect Paradox. Why repetition makes you like things, even if they are terrible. You hated it at first. The song, the commercial, the influencer who begins every video with, "Hey, besties like you have signed an invisible contract to tolerate them." But then, something weird happened. You heard the song again, and again, and again. You saw the commercial 10 times during one episode of something you were not even really watching. You stumbled across the influencer ES content so often that now you hear their voice when you butter toast. And now you kind of like them. You hum the song, you repeat the slogan, you watch the videos. You catch yourself saying, "Hey besties," ironically, then sincerely, then in your sleep. Congratulations. You have just met the Exposure Effect Paradox. The psychological truth that the more often you encounter something, the more likely you are to start liking it, even if you originally found it repulsive, boring, or aggressively mediocre. Let us start with the science. The exposure effect, also called the mere exposure effect, is a concept in psychology first studied by Robert Zayonk, rhymes with science, which is fun but irrelevant. He found that repeated exposure to a stimulus increases your preference for it. In other words, familiarity breeds affection, not contempt, affection, which is deeply unfortunate if what you are repeatedly exposed to is a jingle that sounds like it was written by a committee of toddlers with access to caffeine and auto-tune. Let us go real life. You hear a song. It is repetitive, predictable, lyrically suspicious. The first time, you roll your eyes. The third time, you tolerate it. The seventh time, you tap your foot. The 12th time, you know every word and you have picked a favorite verse, and now you are defending the bridge like it is a misunderstood symphony. This is not taste. This is brainwashing, delivered one play at a time. Let us talk about ads. No one likes ads. You do not click on them. You skip them. You pretend you are above them. But after the 20th time seeing the same product flash on your screen, something happens. You start thinking about it. Not wanting it, necessarily, but recognizing it, trusting it, mentally filing it under real or popular or maybe I should consider it. But because your brain is lazy, it assumes that what it sees often must be safe, so it lowers its guard. And suddenly, you are buying a weighted blanket from a brand you do not remember liking because your brain whispered, "We know this one." Let us talk about faces. This one is awkward. You see someone's face often, at work, on TV, at the gym, and you start liking them more. Not because they are kind, not because they are smart, but because they are there, frequently. Your brain starts seeing familiarity as safety, as value, as attraction. This is how workplace crushes happen. You are not in love. Your brain is just deeply confused and overexposed. Let us get social. The exposure effect is why trends catch on. You see someone wearing socks with sandals. You mock them. Then you see it again. Then again. Then it shows up on someone hot. Then on a celebrity. Then on your friend. Then on you. And suddenly, you are the guy explaining. It is actually a comfort thing while walking through Trader Joe AS in what is essentially a rebellion against foot dignity. It is not that you changed your mind. Your brain got tired of resisting. Let us talk about food. The first time you try kombucha, it tastes like carbonated regret. But you keep drinking it. Why?
Because it is in your fridge. Because your friend said it is healthy. Because someone mentioned gut biome, and now you are afraid of your own intestines. Eventually, the taste becomes familiar. Then you like it. Then you crave it. Then you become the kombucha person, evangelizing fermented tea to strangers, like it is a religion that smells slightly like vinegar and poor decisions. Let us go deeper. Why does this happen? Because your brain prefers the known.
Unknown things are risky. They could be dangerous, untrustworthy, embarrassing. But known things? Safe. You have seen them before. They have not exploded. They have not harmed you. So your brain relaxes. Familiarity becomes a stand-in for quality, even when quality is absent. Even when you are binge-watching a show you do not even like because you are 8 episodes in and your brain says, "We are committed now." Let us talk about branding. Repetition is not just a strategy. It is the strategy. You see the logo enough times, you begin to trust the brand. You recognize it. You choose it, even if the product is average, even if the experience is meh. Even if the last time you tried it, it made your stomach consider early retirement. You choose it because it is familiar. Your brain hates thinking harder than it has to, so it picks what it knows. Let us go emotional. This is why you stay in patterns. You date the same kind of person. You choose the same kind of job. You react to stress the same way you always have. Not because it works, but because it is known. You know what happens. You know how it feels. You know the rhythm of the dysfunction. Your brain says, yes, this again, even when it hurts. Because pain is preferable to uncertainty. Let us talk politics. The exposure effect is why slogans work, why faces matter, why familiarity becomes loyalty. It is not about policy. It is about repetition. If someone says something often enough, in enough ways, across enough platforms, eventually, your brain starts nodding. Not because it is true, but because it feels known. And known feels correct, even when it is clearly not. Even when it is dangerous. Even when it is a lie wrapped in a flag holding a pie chart. Let us reframe. The exposure effect is not always bad. It helps you learn languages. It helps babies recognize faces. It helps you find comfort in routines. It is why certain songs feel like home and certain smells feel like memory. But it can also trap you into liking what you never questioned, into accepting what you never chose, into repeating what you never enjoyed. Let us go personal. You have liked things just because they would not leave you alone. A brand, a flavor, a show, a person. You swore you would not, but it wore you down, with time, with volume, with familiarity. That is not love. That is exposure, dressed up in nostalgia. And it is sneaky. So sneaky that you might never notice until one day you are enthusiastically defending the Fast and Furious franchise and you do not remember how you got here. Let us end on a thought. Your brain is trying its best, but it is easily tricked. So be careful what you repeat, what you click, what you watch, what you consume. Because eventually, you will like it. Even if it started with you screaming, "Who would ever listen to this?" And if you do find yourself humming the same annoying chorus for the 5th time today while making coffee and contemplating your life choices, blame your neurons and the radio station that will not stop playing it every hour on the hour like it is part of some sonic hostage negotiation. You will cave. We all do. And that, my friend, is why you now think you enjoy sparkling water that tastes like static and regret.